that we needed to mount an effective response to the pandemic. And this was even more compelling because noong February, March, nung nag-umpisang magkaroon na po tayo ng mga kaso, ay talagang yung mga suppliers natin dati na kung saan nagpo-procure ang inyong DOH, halos talagang wala na po silang kakayahan na mag-supply dahil unang-una noong January nagkaroon po tayo ng Taal volcano eruption. Doon pa lang po naubos yung ating pong stocks of mga face mask at kanya talagang very acute yung ating pong situation and nag-umpisa na po ang pandemya sa atin at kinailangan po natin na bigyan proteksyon lalong-lalo na ang ating pong mga healthcare workers na sila po ang direktamenteng nangalaga ng ating pong mga COVID patients. Plus, ganun din po sa ating mga mamamayan na nangangailangan din po ng mga protective equipment. Yung pong PSDBM naman may mandato to procure even from international suppliers. Kanya minabuti namin na sila lang po siguro ang kayang makatulong sa ating pong matinding pangailangan. Noong panahon na yun at hanggang ngayon ganun pa din. Yes. Salamat po. Salamat po, Mr. Chairman.
Nabanggit nyo kanina, of course, inamin po ninyo, kayo ang nagdesisyon, pero nabanggit ninyo na napag-usapan din ito sa NTF. Sino sa NTF ang nagrekomenda kasama sa pagre-rekomenda na ilipat ang 42 billion purchases sa DBMPS? Sino-sino?
Nagkaroon kasi kami nung at that time, Your Honor, although syempre...
Pangalan po ang hinihingi natin sa NTF. Nabanggit ninyo ang NTF. Sino-sino po sa NTF ang nagrekomenda kasama po ninyo sa pagdesisyon at nagrekomenda sa inyo na ilipat sa DBMPS yung 42 billion?
Pwede po natin, Mr. Chairman, to recognize Secretary Charlie Galvez, who is the NTF Chief Implementer.
Mr. Chairman, good Secretary, you admitted that you made the decision. So you know who you spoke with. So why have Mr. Secretary Galvez participate or be the one to answer? We want the answer from you. It was your decision, and you said the NTF discussed it. So you have personal knowledge as to who were part of the discussion. So please inform us, this committee, as to who among those in the NTF recommended the transfer of the DBMP to DBMPS of the 42 billion. We just want the facts, Mr.
Yeah, well,
we are not making any accusations. We just want the facts.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, pinag-usapan po namin yan with the NTF Chief Implementer, and then also we at the time ang ating testing czar, si Secretary Vince Dizon, some IATF members, I can't recall. It was during this time also that the President had ordered us to make sure that there will be sufficient supplies for our pandemic response. Without, of course, saying kung saan dapat bibilhin ito, except for sa amin, we trust the DBM and its attached agencies. And so, yun po ang naging dahilan na doon po namin hiningian ng suporta ang PSDBM para tugunan yung pangangailangan. Yun lang po, salamat.
Tinatanong natin yan dahil nga sa previous hearings, sinabi ng ating ilang mga senador na may kausap sila sa DOH na sinasabing kaya naman ng DOH gawin itong purchases na ito. Tinatanong din natin yan dahil gusto nating malaman bakit napakalaking pondo nga ang nilipat. So this was your decision as Secretary of Health to transfer the 42 billion procurement of items to the DBMPS from the DOH budget. With the recommendation of the NTF, Did you consult the DBMPS? Was there a recommendation from the DBMPS in this regard?
Your Honor, as I have said earlier, mandato po nila ito at kami po talagang we tried. Ngayon, kaya namin na mag-procure dahil may supplies, nag-stabilize na ang world supply chain. But at that time, talagang walang-wala po eh. Talagang hirap na hirap kami. In fact, we were so...
Pulong ba kayo, Mr. Secretary? Nagkaroon ba kayo ng pagpupulong with the DBM Secretary Abisado or DBMPS Head Christopher Lao before you made the decision? Nagkaroon ba kayo ng pag-uusap?
Yes, I think so. May mga pag-uusap kami but I just can't recall the exact time.
Doon sa mga pag-uusap na yun, sino-sino pa ang nakausap ninyo? So nakausap ninyo si DBM Secretary Abisado at I assume he also said okay, ilipat sa DBMPS, no? And I assume kausap niyo si Christopher Lao at siya rin sinabi niya, okay, pwede pong ilipat sa amin yan. Tama po ba yun?
Tama po yan. Yung
Okay.
amin pong paglilipat ng mga pondo, hindi po one time. Ito po ay in several periods of mga dates na amounts, no, depending on what we needed at a particular point in the pandemic response.
So kasama din po si dating Secretary Abisado at si Christopher Lao dun sa pagpasya, no, na mailipat yung 42 billion mula po sa inyong tanggapan para sa DBMPS. Tama po yun?
Tama po yun.
Okay, salamat po. My next question is with Mr. Lao. Is he still around?
Present, Mr. Chair. Present, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Mr. Lao, are you in the Philippines?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'm at home.
So you are in Manila because there was information going around that you left the country. So that is not true.
Not true, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you. When the decision to transfer the amounts on a staggered basis or on tranches, in tranches rather, to the DBMPS, the entire 42 billion eventually was transferred under your watch. Is that not right?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
And you confirm and the earlier manifestation of Secretary Duque that you were part of that process of decision making and that you agreed to the transfer of the amounts totaling 42 billion to the DBMPS. That is right.
Mr. Chair, I think initially I'm not part of the IATF NTF. PSDBM will only cannot make a decision whether we will accept or not the transfer of funds. It should have a legal basis, and I think that decision making is through DBM and GPPB, the government procurement.
You mean to say, Mr. Lao, you cannot refuse when an amount is turned over to you?
Well, if it is considered common supplies, we can refuse. If it's considered non-common supplies,
in other words, you have discretion to accept or to reject depending on whether it is legal or not. You cannot do something that is illegal, hindi ba?
Mr. Chair, if it is...
And if it is illegal, just let me complete my and if it is illegal, isn't it your duty to refuse?
Yes, Mr.
You are a
Chair.
lawyer.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Of course, your explanation is it was legal, therefore you accepted it. Hindi
Yes,
ba?
Mr. Chair.
Okay, yes. But the point is, if there is something illegal, you have the duty to refuse. If assuming it is illegal, hindi po ba?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Because you are not in office to do illegal acts. Hindi ba? That's why we take an oath of office. Hindi ba? To uphold and defend the Constitution and to respect and obey and comply with the rules and the regulations and the laws. Hindi ba?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And therefore, if to your mind it was illegal, of course you're saying it is not. But if it was an illegal act, you have the power, you have the authority, and you have the duty, di ba, to reject and to
Yes,
refuse.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, but I go back because sabi kanina ni Secretary Duque, kasama din kayo sa pag-decide, kasama din kayo sa nag-okay na tanggapin. And that's why I just wanted that established. Tinanggap ninyo. Sa paniniwala na legal, sabihin na natin yon. Kahit na sabihin na natin ngayon, may nagsasabi at may datos na nagpapakita na mukhang questionable, at that point, di ba, you had the option to reject or to accept it based on whether it is legal or not. Hindi ba?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Earlier, you said, you're quoted in the newspaper saying that the prices were high because supply was limited. Tama po ba yun?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
In other words, 13 pesos, 20. So, pero yun nga, nabanggit kanina, bakit yung isa 13 pesos lang, yung isa 27 pesos lang? Pero sabi nga ninyo, dahil supply was limited. In an earlier hearing, the chairman of the Blue Ribbon Committee manifested that at the same time that you were purchasing the 13 peso and 27 peso masks, the Red Cross was buying it at 5 pesos. How do you explain that?
I cannot explain that, Mr. Chair. I think the only thing that I can check, Mr. Chair, is that maybe Red Cross is a very good network. They have international ties with International Red Cross, especially in China as well. So they have faster communication.
I assume this is the same explanation for the testing kits, because the Red Cross was buying it at almost half the price when the DBMPS purchased the testing kits, almost double or triple the price. I assume that's the same explanation. That Red Cross might have the network, which
yes,
you do not.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Well, very interesting. No? 5 times the price?
No, Mr.
4
Chair.
times the price?
No, Mr. Chair. No. Let me just clarify. The difference between when we procured the items, initially we were able to buy the face mask at 16 pesos, which was on March 20. Then on April 6, we bought it at 27.49. Then on April 6 at 500,000 at 27.72. Then April 14 at 22.50. April 16 at 22.50, April 20 at 22 pesos, April 27 at 13.
Yes, I understand that. I understand that. But Senator Gordon earlier said that the Red Cross was buying it at 5 pesos per mask. You were saying 13, 16, 27. So that's 5 times more. Diba? For the face masks.
Confirm that, Mr. Chair, because we have not seen the data that the actual amount that Red Cross was actually buying. But assuming that it is true, I believe the difference is that Red Cross has wider access during that time compared to us, Mr. Chair.
Well,
I think they have more
yes.
experience, and I was just recently transferred to our office. Medyo malaki po ang difference, Mr. Chair. Given I think, in fact, early those time, Red Cross was.
Well, it is also possible, Mr. Lau, that you were negligent. It is possible. I'm not saying you were, but the possibility that you were negligent, that you purchased that Red Cross is more circumspect and was able to purchase it at 5 pesos, while government, because perhaps, I don't know, maybe because of negligence, bought it 5 times more expensive. Maybe if there was a more diligent search, maybe if there was a more diligent process, that we could have brought down the price of a 27 peso face mask and a 120 peso, 22 peso face shield. Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair, we just like to state, during that time, we were able to canvass. Ang offer kasi during that time was roughly around 40 pesos. So medyo mahal talaga, in 28 yung surgical mask. And yung face shield, when we were trying to buy it during that time, the offer was around 400, 350, and the lowest was 120. And I
Okay.
think when you say that there might be negligence or we were not able to exhaustively look for the cheapest supplier, there might be a possibility, given the scenario, that we really lack time, that we lack the resources, we lack the connection during the time. That might be a possibility. But
Thank you. On the matter of the quality of the equipment that you purchased, does the DBMPS have the technical expertise to check on whether or not the quality of the face shields, the face masks, and other PPEs were of US grade, or meron ba kayong technical capacity, no?
Under the process of the PSDBM, Mr. Chair, there is a third-party testing facility that is required, that should be undergone by the suppliers after they have won the bidding, and such certifications should be submitted to DOH and PSDBM. Also, DOH should also...
And so you are saying that there was a third party, how do you call it?
DOH is mandated to test it, inspect it together with DBMPS, Mr. Chair. And sometimes the supplier gets their inventory rejected, Mr. Chair. Then they are mandated to replace
So
it.
how many times did you reject?
I don't have the records, Mr. Chair. It's with the inspection division, and I think DOH also has copies of those, Mr. Chair.
So how many times was there any rejection ever of any of these because there have been complaints brought to our attention that there were some masks that were of poor quality. So I just want this clarified.
Yes, also, there are several times, Mr. Chair. In fact, I received one of the complaints from Sandigan Bayan that the ear loops have been removed or napuputol. So
In other words, what we're looking at here is potentially yung mga yun overpriced na, poor quality pa.
I cannot check.
Kasi kayo bumili nun binili ninyo. Tapos sinasabi ninyo ngayon, yes, merong mga hindi pumasa at ni-reject ninyo. So
Yes,
binili na ninyo ng mahal, tapos sa quality, meron pang nakakalusot na hindi maganda.
Pag rejected po, Mr. Chair, hindi po natin binabayaran yun. Tapos pag pumasa po,
Hindi na babayaran yun.
hindi pag rejected po, hindi po dapat bayaran. They have to replace it with something that is
Can we have the data? I know you're no longer in, but to the DBMPS, whoever is the officer in charge, we want to have a complete file of all those orders that were rejected, how much was involved, and which companies were behind these rejected items. Dahil siyempre, ang concern natin dito ay binibigyan ba natin ng inferior quality protective equipment ang ating mga frontliners. Hindi ba? You must admit, Mr. Lao, di ba? Na buhay ang kapalit pagka hindi tama yung equipment o kaya inferior quality at hindi effective protection. Tama po ba yun?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And at one point, I understand, mataas ang death rate at infection rate ng ating mga frontline workers.
Yes,
that's why we want to see the quality, diba, of the items that were purchased, and also the process of whether or not there were standard testing that was undertaken. We would like to see all these documents submitted to the committee, Mr. Chairman. Are you familiar with this situation wherein the specifications were changed? The specifications of the DTI, for example, in terms of the quality of the masks that were to be produced, that when it was brought to the DBMPS technical group together with the DOH, binago yung specification?
No, Mr. Chair.
Well, the information that we have received is that the DTI provided the DOH with very strict specifications for face masks, and yet the DOH loosened, or for some reason the DBMPS and the DOH decided to loosen the very restrictive items. This is from the DTI, because the DTI was working with the local manufacturers. And the local manufacturers go through a very stringent process of quality control. And there were a number of well, a number of them relayed to us that it appeared like you were stricter to the local manufacturers than you were to the importers.
No,
Don't know
Mr.
if this is
Chair.
true, but
No.
that is a concern that we also would like to check.
No, Mr. Chair. In fact, we negotiated with DTI to conduct a mass seminar and discussion with the private sector so we can teach them on how to participate in government bidding, in government procurement. We also discuss with them on the application sa mga certification and for the testing requirements of DOH. We also discuss it with DTI thoroughly, Mr. Chair. We in fact
Please, Senator
going
Pangilinan, please wrap up.
Yes,
Thank you.
we will do that.
proceeding to Enihan 2, there's a requirement for bidding. That's the time we had a massive information dissemination with DTI to the private sector. In fact, GPPB was tapped to discuss on the bidding process so that the private sector can bid with us, Mr. Chair. And,
Yes, my final question is again back to Secretary Duque. Secretary Duque, in the last hearing, you said that you were ordered by Malacanang to pay within 10 days the SRA. Is this SRA payment within 10 days for the 20,000 frontliners only? Or is this 10 days deadline for all 488,000 frontliners?
Ito lang pong 20,208 because this was the list that was forwarded to us by the healthcare facilities. But,
But I am sure the President meant to pay all those who are claiming, hindi po ba? Hindi lang yung 20,000.
we are dependent on the validated list. It's very difficult.
So how long will it take for you to validate the list so that you can get 95% paid? Because right now with these 20,000 workers and 311 million, you're only addressing 5% of the claims, more or less. Kasi 488,000 yung kailangan bayaran, 20,000 lang. So paano yung 95% ng mga frontliner? Kailan nila matatanggap? How long will you process it? How long do you have to process it? They want to know how long because every day they're risking their lives. Every day they can be exposed to COVID. So at least let us give them, how do you call it? The courtesy at the very least of telling them when will they get it. It is due them. You can't keep them, allowing them to humaharap sila sa bala, ika nga, sa gera, tapos bahala na kung kailan nyo matatanggap yung mga bala ninyo at yung mga equipment ninyo. Kailan mababayaran yung 95% na hindi pa nababayaran yung 488,000? Ano ang timetable ninyo? Meron ba?
Gaya na sinabi ko, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman, yung listing napakamahalaga po nito dahil yan po magiging...
Yes, I understand. You cannot release without the list. But give our frontliners a timetable so that they can expect it and that you also will call on your people to meet that deadline. Kung walang deadline, baka walang mangyayari sa atin. We want to have a timeline. When will the 95% who have already served and should be entitled to the SRA receive the SRA? Maybe 3 months? 2 months? 3 months? Bago magpasko?
Mga 2 months yan. Mga 2 months, Your Honor. Meron na po.
Okay. That's my last question. 2 months to be able to attend to and deliver on the 95% SRA of our frontliners. At least maliwanag yan.
Yes, yung validated list po natin.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My next questions will be in the next round. Maraming salamat.
Thank you very much, Senator Pangilinan. I just want to be sure Secretary Duque answered us right. You said within 2 months yung validated list. Ang tanong sa'yo ni Senator Pangilinan, when are you finally going to get the validated list?
Meron na po tayong natapos within this week.
I'm sure you have, pero yung kompletong validated list.
With the President's order na within 10 days. So nailabas po ng PSDBM yung SARO for the 311 million. And then we sent also for the 17,670 second batch. And that's the third batch, 80,048. So this is being processed by the DBM. Here, dito po sa 80,000, dito pa po sa amin yan kasi nga yung validation. Tapos saka namin po ipadadala sa DBM. Salamat po, Mr. Chairman.
Now, addressing the fact that the variant today in Delta is in the air, and if they're in a hazardous place like a hospital, even those not in the COVID ward will now be included. Would that be correct?
Nag-usap po kami ni Chairman Mike Aguinaldo kahapon just before the House hearing. And we agreed that short of an amendment to the law or the creation of a new law for a more liberal interpretation of the initial provision found in the Bayanihan 2 law, I have written to Secretary Maynard, well, the draft pa lang is with us now, to DOJ Secretary Guevara para tingnan kung pwede magbigay ng opinion just to give our people some level of confidence na pwedeng liberal ang interpretation. Kasi nakalagay kasi nga doon, and I find it not anymore relevant, yung sinasabi nila na those in direct contact or those in direct care of COVID patients or indirect contact. So yun ang medyo talagang limiting. So yun po ang napagkasunduan namin ni Chairman Mike Aguinaldo ng COA. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So, you are working to make sure that all those are included, and you're just trying to get, as I said, a little risk-taking, and you want to cushion your risk by consulting yung ating Secretary of Justice for an opinion. Actually, the words, sir, is directly catering to, which means yung nasa COVID ward ka, or in contact with COVID-19 patients, which means you could be in a hospital, nasa loob ka ng hospital, and you could be in contact with COVID-19 patients, and you do not know if they are already affected. So you are in hazardous place. That's why malakas ang loob ko na mag-advise na hazardous talaga yan, and I think Mike Aguinaldo of COA agrees. So I just have just to wrap up the question of Senator Pangilinan. Your job is to protect everybody, particularly our healthcare workers from so that the health system will not collapse. Now, may I ask you, sir, yung mga kumadrona, umiikot sila halimbawa sa isang stricken area, would they be covered by hazard work? At least individually, if they report individually na they went to an area where there's COVID, and that they should be given some measure of protection, or for that matter, yung barangay health workers, medyo malayo na yan. Pero tignan natin, meron ba? And finally, is it a question of lack of money kaya hindi kayo makabayad? Para sabihin na natin na totoo kung hindi kayo makabayad.
Well, yung funding, maybe it's DBM best position to answer. But tama po kayo, yung mga komadrona, midwives, in fact, even barangay health workers sa mga rural health units, kasama po yan.
And we should adopt a very liberal attitude towards them, because if they get sick, walang magpapanganak na probinsya, kulang ang doktor, wala rin makakatulong sa preventive healthcare, preventive medicine, yung primary healthcare. So I'm glad that you have a very liberal interpretation of that, and I hope that you will include that with Secretary Guevara, who's a good lawyer. And just to let you know, we have finished the draft, and Senator Angara and I will co-author it. I'll send it to Senator Angara so that he can review it, and we can file it, and Monday, hopefully, we will be given a chance to apply it. But anyway, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I now call on the Right Honorable Ms. Lisa Hontiveros.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Continuing with Secretary Duque, a follow-up question from the last hearing, Secretary, tapos ilang mga bagong tanong na hindi pa natin napag-uusapan. If the good secretary recalls, in the hearing 2 days ago, tinanong ko po sa inyo, in this search for funds to fully pay the 488,000 plus healthcare workers. At hindi lang yung first 20,000, sabi nga ni Sen Kiko, 5,000 pa lang yan, but the whole 488,000. Tinanong ko po sa inyo, Sec, if it's possible para sa DOH na i-augment yung inyong quick reaction funds, quick response funds, QRF, through savings para bayaran lahat ng healthcare worker benefits. I hope that 2 days later at that time, 2 days ago, sabi nyo it may be possible. I hope you can give the committee a firmer answer now kung mabumobilize nyo itong QRF plus savings para bayaran yung buong 488,000 healthcare workers. Kumusta na po yon, Secretary?
Mr. Chairman, usapin na kaperahan po ay mas maigi pong sagutin na ni Yusek Leopoldo Bong Vega or Director Rowena Lora. Kung magkano na ang natukoy na posibleng pagmulan ng kinakailangan pondo. Mr. Chairman, kindly...
Pero, Secretary, if we may, kasi I still have some new questions para po sa inyo rin. At least meron na po bang advice sa inyo, sina Ma'am Laura at yung isa pong USEC or ASEC na binanggit nyo, if at least in principle, pwede na pong mag-commit ang DOH to use your QRF plus savings para bayaran po yung healthcare workers?
Yes, ma'am. I have just been given the communication for the from the Financial Management Service. We can indeed use the Quick Response Fund to augment the benefits of the healthcare workers.
That is very good news, Secretary. Yes, sir, you were saying.
Well, yung amount kasi we still have to identify the exact amount, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman.
All right, sir. But meron na po ba kayong ballpark figure, if not the amount per se, yung percentage pa ng additional healthcare workers out of the 488,000 total na mako-cover nitong QRF nyo plus savings?
Can you give us a little more time,
Certainly,
Madam
Secretary. Perhaps,
Yes.
hopefully, within this hearing before the
sure.
chair suspends it later. Thank you, Secretary. Ngayon, sir, Secretary.
Senator Rizzo, your
Yes,
permission.
Mr. Chair.
I just want to ask para in fairness to Secretary Duque. Did you not anticipate na magkakaroon kayo ng problema na yung iba mabibigyan? Di ba dyan na-anticipate yan at di kayo naghanda ng pera?
To be honest, yung amin po kasing naunang pinagtuunan, no? Yung ating po mga public healthcare workers, dahil yung mga mahihirap po natin mga kababayan, sila po ang napupunta sa mga public health facilities.
Kaya nga, so focus nyo
But eventually,
doon. Hindi nyo na-anticipate talaga na maaaring lumala itong pandemic. Samahan nyo ng ibang mga tao na na-expose.
actually, nirecommend
To be honest, because di ba? Sabihin nyo na, hindi namin na-anticipate. Maintindihan ko yun. Ewan ko iba sa natin, pero ako maintindihan ko yung kung di nyo na-anticipate. But of course, the pudding will be in the eating, right?
Yes, sir. Pero yung kaya nga po naman yung SRA ay nagkaroon ng batas yan na masakupan pati ang mga pribadong healthcare workers. So meron naman pong ganon na pag-iisip and concern. At yun naman po request for funding ay continuous provision of the actual hazard duty pay and also the special risk allowance from December 2020 to June 30, 2021. In fact, nagastos nga po dyan, 16 billion po. Kaya kasama po naman sila talaga.
All right, thank you. Senator Rizzo, with my
Thank you.
apologies.
It's all right, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Secretary, just for the record, no, since the first hearing, pangatlo na po ito, sinasabi po ng ating mga kababayan sa mga care workers organizations at saka sa mga individual hospital employee unions and associations na pati po sa public hospitals marami pa ring hindi nakatatanggap at pati o lalo na sa mga private hospitals marami ang hindi nakatatanggap. I could accept, Secretary and Mr. Chair, kung nasa first few months pa lang tayo ng pandemic. But we're already in the first and a half year. And it's excruciating isipin na hanggang ngayon, kailangan pang kumpletuhin ng DOH yung listahan para lang maibigay yung mga special risk allowance, hazard pay, at yung mats, no? Yung pang meals, accommodations, transportation, plus insurance na provided for naman na by law. Kaya I'm sure and I hope the Secretary understands yung sense of urgency ng komiteng ito because nakikiisa lang kami sa sense of urgency ng ating mga healthcare workers. Unacceptable po na we're still at this point in time. And yung sinabi din po ng DBM nung nakaraang hearing na kung talagang kulang yung ibinigay na pera sa inyo, bakit may isinoling halos 12 billion pesos, no? Yung lumabas sa COA report. So to my new question, Secretary, tungkol din sa pera na nasa sa kamay na natin, hindi pa na-obligate, hindi pa nagamit. Ito po yung unobligated vaccine budget. Ayon po sa mga dokumento na sinumite ng DOH sa inyo pong Statement of Allotments, Obligations, Balances, and Disbursements, nakalagay po doon na there's 2.5 billion pesos for vaccine procurement na unobligated. And unfortunately, hindi na po ito pwedeng i-obligate kasi nag-lapse yung budget na iyon December 31, 2020. And these comprise foreign loans, no, granted ng World Bank, granted ng Asian Development Bank noong 2020, specifically for vaccine procurement. So, yung panahong sinabi ng gobyerno, kulang ang pondo natin, kulang yung mga donasyon siguro, kailangan nating umutang. Why didn't DOH obligate that 2.5 billion pesos within year 2020 for vaccine procurement?
Your Honor, Mr. Chairman, yan naman po hiningan na namin ng reissuance ng SARO. So it can still be utilized, Mr. Chairman, Your Honor.
Well, yes, Secretary, pero kinailangan yung humingi ng reissuance ng SARO dahil hindi nyo na nga po inobligate in timely fashion within the given year. So ano po yung naging dahilan? I mean, we went through the trouble, government went through the trouble na utangin ito, 2.5 billion pesos. 9 months of 2020 were pandemic months. Bakit po hindi na-obligate ng department para sa bakuna pa?
Ang nangyari po kasi yung bahagi nung pondong atin po pinag-uusapan, isinet aside muna po natin yan for vaccines advanced market commitment as suppliers may require immediate payment to lock in or secure the supplies, no? Pero unfortunately, wala pong napirmahan na supply agreement and this was closed before the year end dahil nga yung global supply at that time talagang kulang na kulang. But we needed the money na kailangan meron. Just in case secure, at least meron tayo kaagad. So I think it was prudent to have done what we did. Salamat po.
So Secretary, kung sinet aside nyo po iyang pondong iyan for the time na magkakaroon na ng lock-in at maibabayad po iyan para ma-secure natin yung supply, saan po, kung hindi ba DOH yung nagkulang, so sino ang nagkulang na ahensya para ma-perfect, makumpleto yung pag-lock-in na yon at magamit, ma-obligate itong loan funds na nasa kamay na ng DOH, naka-lock-in ninyo?
Salamat to. Yung proseso po niyan, yung proseso po kasi niyan ay doon sa mga vaccine manufacturing companies, tatlong hakbang. Una yung non-disclosure agreement, tapos susunod po yung term sheet agreement, and then the supply agreement. So yeah, binabantayan po natin yan together with Secretary Galvez. Baka pwede pong with the permission of the chair to please recognize Secretary Galvez, who was more in direct contact with the representatives of the vaccine manufacturing companies. And also,
Sec, bago po i-recognize ni Chair si Sec Galvez, Ang direksyon po ba nitong pagsagot ninyo ay syempre hindi naman hawak ng gobyerno ang desisyon sa tatlong steps sa process na yun. Hindi hawak ang vaccine manufacturers. Are you suggesting na hindi DOH ang nagkamali at nagkulang dito sa hindi na obligate ang 2.5 billion pesos loans for vaccine procurement, kundi ang IATF ba ang nagkulang at nagkamali or masyadong mabagal kaya tuloy hindi na obligate yung 2.5 billion na yan?
Yung sa amin po, hindi po kami nagkamali. Hanggat sa maaari, napakamahalaga po talaga ng mga bakuna. Pero may
Yes.
proseso po tayo na dapat sundin. At yun naman mga vaccine manufacturing companies, ako yung nagpapasalamat ka sa Senado dahil naipasan nyo yung COVID Vaccine Act. No? Doon naman po nakita natin ang dami-daming mga demands dahil nga itong bakuna bago under an emergency use authorization, ang daming mga hinihingi ng kasiguraduhan ng mga manufacturing companies na pati indemnification, di ba, yung law, hiningi din nila yan eh. So,
At ibinigay po ng Senado yan.
Maraming salamat po at sa inyo pong suporta doon. At kanya naman po napaka-mahalaga na dahil lang buong mundo ay nag-aagawan sa bakuna, ay sinecure natin yung pondo na yan
Kaya nga po.
sakasakali po. Pero pwede naman po i-reissue. So, hindi naman problema ito.
Well, nagiging problema po, Sec, di ba? Kasi we're falling behind, flattening the curve, we're falling behind the positivity rate, lalong-lalo na dahil bagamat nag-ramp up na, pero kailangan pang mas mag-ramp up yung ating vaccination rollout. Mr. Chair, may I request the Chair to recognize Sec Galvez to give his perspective on this question before I go back to Sec Duque?
Yes, Secretary Galvez is recognized. Please answer the question of the Honorable Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sec Galvez, ano pong perspective nyo? Bakit po ba nag-expire yung by December 31, nag-lapse yung budget na ito na 2.5 billion pesos in loans para dapat sa vaccine procurement? Bakit po hindi na ma-obligate ng DOH?
Unang-unang, Your Honor, Sir Chairman, Senator Risa. First of all, may proseso po kasi po yung ating tawag natin negotiation. And basically yung yung ating negotiation, nakatali na po yung tinatawag natin multilateral arrangements with ADB at saka World Bank. So ang na po namin, yun ang concentration namin because most of our negotiations is a multilateral agreement with the World Bank and ADB. And if you remember, Your Honor, ang pinaka namin, wala pa kami napirmahan na supply agreement to use the money. Meaning yung pera natin hindi natin pwedeng ma-obligate considering that the supply agreement is not yet been signed. If we'll remember the first supply agreement that we have signed is basically yung through World Bank yung Moderna, but that was already 2021. That's a process, Your Honor. I believe
Yes, Secretary.
the DOH have no fault on not obligating the 2.4, and maybe Yusek Mark is very knowledgeable considering he is the one in charge of the procurement with the DOH.
Pero allow me to stay with you, Sec Galvez, on this question kasi hindi ba pwedeng sabihin na walang pirma kasi ika nga somebody dropped the ball?
I think hindi naman po drop the ball kasi talaga napakahirap yun. If you remember, Madam Senator, na hindi talaga pumapayag yung ibang manufacturer kung walang very definite na indemnity clause at saka yung immunity grant from the government. That's why the different manufacturing companies only sign when we have the landmark legislation that we will really thank the Senate for doing this. So nung nagkaroon po tayo ng National Vaccination Program Act, doon lang po pumirma yung mga Western brand.
I understand, Sec, na gaya ng sinabi ko kanina, hindi naman natin nahawak yung decision o yung pace ng mga vaccine manufacturers na yun. Pero yung schedule ng kontrata ng mga loans kasi may ina-anticipate tayong schedule na ma-obligate ang pondong ito at ma-secure natin yung supplies. Siyempre, nasa korte natin yon. Kaya, di ba, I mean, in hindsight, parang kung alam pala natin na magiging ganyang kabagal yung proseso ng kumpleto, pag-perfect na mga kontratang yun, di ba, why did we procure those loans in the year 2020 in the first place? And in fact, let me stay with you on this, Sec Galvez. Is this 2.5 billion pesos? Ito po ba yung main reason natin bakit tayo dumadanas ngayon ng shortage of supplies? Ito po yung shortfall sa supplies sa ngayon?
I think it's different, Your Honor, kasi meron tayong separate budget for the vaccines. Ang budget natin sa vaccines is $1.3 billion coming from multilateral. That's what I understand, Your Honor. And the other 2.5 billion or savings from the DOH, it will be reserved for some sort of purchase orders for those vaccines that will not meet the ADB and the World Bank and the World Bank stringent regulatory requirement. So it is being used. The DOH savings can be used for the procurement of those vaccines that will not fall on the multilateral agreements because of their failure to submit with the stringent requirements of the World Bank and the ADB, because they have a very stringent regulatory requirement, Your Honor.
Of course, Secretary. So meron silang stringent regulatory requirements which should govern our use of that 2.5 billion kasi sa kanila nga natin inutang iyon. Ngayon na hindi na-obligate yan ng DOH within year 2020, hindi ba magkakaroon tayo ng, dahil nagkaroon tayo ng inability sa pag-obligate ng loans na iyan within the identified year, hindi ba maapektuhan yung mga future foreign assisted projects na ibibigay dapat sa atin for our COVID response?
Your Honors, I think it is more appropriate for Yusek Coven to answer this because he is the one in charge of the foreign loans, Your Honor.
Thank you, Secretary Galvez. Mr. Chair, could you just go very briefly to the USEC mentioned and then babalikan ko po si Secretary Duque?
Yes, the USEC mentioned, I didn't get the name.
Sec Galvez, sino po yung sinabi niyo?
Yusek Marco Benson.
USEC Camacho?
Yusek Hoven, Chair, Mr. Chair.
USEC Hoven?
Yes, sir.
Please go ahead. Mr. Hoven, you're not from the Department of Health, are you? You are the representative of the Department of Finance, correct?
Yes, sir.
For the IATF?
Yes, sir. Actually, I'm not the representative of the Department of Finance in the IATF, but I'm the Undersecretary for International Finance. So basically, multilateral loans are covered by my mandate.
Right, understood.
So,
I just want to be sure that you're not with the DOH. Go ahead, please. Answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Yusek Hoven, hindi ba maapektuhan yung future foreign assisted projects natin for COVID-19 response dahil nag-fail tayo i-obligate itong 2.5B loans na dapat sa vaccine procurement? Yes, Mr. Chair.
May I ask Director if Mr. Hoven has taken his oath? Undersecretary Hoven, have you taken your oath?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So this is a continuation of the session and hence...
my apologies. Just wanted to be sure that we're okay. Go ahead.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Yusek Hoven, please.
Okay. Yeah. So, Mr. Chair, basically the delay in the obligation of the amount will not have any effect on the disbursement of the loan because, as you know, the loan we're talking about is we're talking about three loans here. Basically, one from the ADB, one from the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and one from the World Bank. So a failure to disburse in 2020 will not affect any disbursement in 2021. It's merely a delay in the disbursement of the amount. So nauna po yung pag-contract ng supply agreement. Then once the supply agreement is contracted, disbursement from the loan will be mandated based on the supply agreement. So if, for example, if the time comes that we need to pay, say, 15% of the supply agreement, then kuha tayo ng pera from the bank and it will be paid directly to the manufacturer. So wala po siyang effect.
So you're telling the committee, Yusek Hoven, that though the loans were contracted for year 2020, kumbaga walang kaso kahit gamitin natin sa 2021 or onwards.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, so I disagree with the premise because in the first place, the loans were contracted in 2021. Basically, these three loans for vaccine procurement were contracted in Q1 2021. But then in 2020, in late 2020, there was a modification of a pre-existing loan with the I think it was the ADB, wherein we made a reallocation of $25 million for purposes of vaccine procurement. So why was this? Because at that time, if you recall, we were dealing with the issue of advanced market commitment. So we cannot proceed with the negotiations with suppliers if we were not ready to fork off some funds for them for the advanced market commitment just to lock it in. That's essentially the answer to the question.
Thank you, Yusek Hoven. Mr. Chair, I'll have to return to that issue kasi iba yung dates ng figures ko. What we're hearing now from Yusek Hoven is may $25 million na ni-reconfigure last quarter year 2020. Pero ang alam kong tinatanong kong 2.5 billion pesos was contracted not in quarter 1 of 2021 pero sa year 2020. So baka balikan ko itong tanong na ito with the Yusek later in the hearing or in my next round, Mr. Chair. Could I question now again former Yusek Lau? I have further questions about the procurement undertaken by PSDBM under his watch.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Afternoon, Senator Antibares.
Good afternoon, Mr. Lau.
Mr. Chair, as Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Chair.
I have a heart. It's not wooden.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, if you prefer.
Thank you very
Certainly,
much.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Lau, one follow-up question dun sa isang point na ni-raise ni Minority Leader kahapon and which was in fact revealed to the Senate and the public by Sen Ping last year before I ask you more questions about the PPE's procurement. Nung nakaraang hearing po, Mr. Lau, Senator Frank also asked about the procurement of extraction machines na hindi sila kasama dun sa listahan ng PSDBM of common use supplies and equipment, and yet they were procured. I recall last year, sinabi na ni Sen Ping sa publiko at sa amin dito sa Senado that those extraction machines are specifically called acid nucleic extractors. At sinabi niya noon na ang Go Negosyo through their Project ARC, nabili nila yung acid nucleic extractors for the price of 1.75 million per machine. Binili nila mula sa Sansure. And yet, the Department of Health secured those machines through the PSDBM during your watch, kasi yung mga dokumento were signed by the former Yusek Lau, for 4 million pesos. So more than double the 1.7 na nabili ng private sector. Pwede nyo bang kahit briefly simulang ipaliwanag sa komite iyan, Mr. Lau?
I think that was the issue on the Kingfisher PCR machine and the Sansure PCR machine. The we asked based on my memory, ma'am, kasi medyo wala na akong records eh. Based on my memory, recollection, when we received the APR from DOH, they specifically requested the Kingfisher machine or Thermo Fisher machine, sorry, is the Thermo Fisher machine, I think, the extraction or RT-PCR machine. We asked them why the said item was brand-based, kasi usually we buy generic. They explained to us that that specific machine was to be used in the laboratory of the RITM, Research Institute.
For tropical medicine.
Yes, yeah. For tropical medicine. Yung office kasi nila, ma'am, nakaset up na daw So yung explanation nila, it's like kung Apple lahat ang system, tapos bumili sila ng isang accessory doon sa entire laboratory na Android, hindi daw siya mag-fit. So I asked, why what is the difference between this machine and the other machines? They explained is, ang Sansure kasi daw is closed system, while the Thermo Fisher is open system. So we further asked, what is an open system? Sabi niya, ang open system kasi, pag wala na ang coronavirus, because during that time, the DOH and I think the health sector was expecting that we can contain it, and I think the entire world was expecting we can contain it. They said, sayang kasi ang machine pag hindi siya magagamit after the pandemic. So, ang Thermo Fisher daw, once yun ang ginamit mo, tapos later on, gusto mo gumamit ng iba, let's say may typhoid, you want to check, you can use that Thermo Fisher. And let's say, kailangan mo check hepatitis. Hepa ba? Oo. So they can also use that. That's what they told us. So based on that, we conducted meeting. Pero on our record kasi, meron din offer pala si Sansure during that time. Sansure offered it at 4.5 million. Pero hindi siya machine lang. Machine with some accessories. However, since the APR is specific siya na item na bibilhin, ang binili talaga natin based on the procurement is the Thermo Fisher na RT-PCR. Tapos, subsequently, there was a communication sent to us or a publication that was sent out that the supplier of Sansure said that they can offer it at 1.5, same machine. Yun lang po ang nangyari. But based on our record kasi, that same company who said they can offer at 1.5 also sent to us a letter previous to that they're offering that machine at 4.5. Pero meron siyang mga additional na mga accessories or yung mga consumables. Yun lang po, Mr. Chair.
So Mr. Lau, are you telling the committee na ang biniling machine ng Go Negosyo sa kanilang Project ARC mula sa Sansure was just a machine without those accessories?
No, Mr. Chair. I cannot answer that. I have no information as to how much and what are the inclusions on the machines that are procured by Go Negosyo. Yung sa amin lang po is based on the communication sent to us by the local supplier offering the Sansure with the additional na mga items.
Well, I'll check that further, Mr. Lau, kasi dito sa Senado, we don't compare apples with oranges. Kaya interesante sa amin at interesante kung pinakinggan si Senping because ang information namin noon ay pareho. Yung makinang pinrocure ng Go Negosyo at yung pinrocure para sa DOH ng PSDBM pero malayo ang presyo. Less than half yung presyo nung nabili ng Go Negosyo sa Sansure din. So,
yes, we understand.
I'll come back to you on that, Mr. Lau. Ngayon, can we spend a little more time on the PPEs? Preliminary question muna, Mr. Lau. Ang PSDBM ba, as far as you can remember, under your watch, ang PSDBM ba, in accordance with its mandates, did it produce and publish price monitoring reports for PPEs prior to the negotiated procurement using Bayanihan 1 and Bayanihan 2 funds? Nag-produce at publish ba nun?
I'm not aware if it was produced and published, but we have it on records, Mr. Chair. That is the basis before we conduct price monitoring before there's actual request for quotation. Usually, we have two caps. And first cap kasi natin is based on the APR. The agency purchase request has a unit cost. So yung unit cost, dun po limited yung maximum na pagbili natin. The ABC is now set upon our market study. Pag nag-market scan tayo kung ano yung lowest price, that's our ABC, the approved budget cost. And based on that, doon na po tayo nagbe-base ng ating binibili. Like the 27 pesos na mask, the second set of masks that we procured, ang mga offer din kasi is 28 and 40 pesos ng ibang suppliers. So tapos yung sa APR, ang maximum I think unit cost nila per item is 28. So whoever bids lowest, yun yung mananalo. Yung sa face shield naman, yung 120, initially when we market scan, ang offer is 400 plus and the cheapest was 350. When it was sent to me for notice of approval, nagkaroon tayo ng issue kasi 350 was very high. We had it rejected and re-scan ulit, nagpa-rebid tayo. That's why yung ibang bidders nag-sustain pa rin at 300 plus. Only one company bidded very low, which is 120. During that time, he was very low. So na-award sa kanya. Meron din tayong initially binid during that time, the N95. During that time, bidded at ang offer kasi during that time, 300 to 500 yung N95. Ang isa lang po ang nagbid ng 150. I forgot the name. Pero ang mali ko doon, hindi ko pinirmahan kasi nung chinek namin sa DTI, 100 pa ang SRP. So sabi ko, pag pinirmahan natin to, patay tayo. So, nirefuse natin. When we rebidded it, umabot na po siya ng 500 lahat. So,
Mr. Lau, para lang makuha ng komite yung buong picture ng iba't ibang mga health products na to, can we just request, and I request the chair, can we request PSDBM yung record nila ng price monitoring nila for the said period nitong iba't ibang health products? Because I'd like to ask you specifically, Mr. Lau, more questions about the PPE. Would that be all right, Mr. Chairman, to request PSDBM for that record of their price monitoring for the said period? So perhaps beginning March 2020.
Yes, can we be a little bit more specific? Do you want the whole month of March, April, and etc.? Because they will engage in carpet bombing. They will send out all kinds of garbage. We want to be sure that we can pin them down.
Oh no, it's very. These are very valuable information, Mr. Chair. Could I? Yes.
So ordered.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So, and then Mr. Lau, did the PSDBM also produce and publish price monitoring reports prior to the purchase of supplies using its own funds, and for the purpose of building up an inventory of PPEs? Mag-focus na lang po tayo sa PPEs, Mr. Lau, kasi dun yung mga tanong ko sa inyo na namimisteryosohan talaga ako.
I am not aware if it was published, but we conduct price monitoring, Madam Chair.
All right, Mr. Lau. And if the DBM-OSEC used the formalized process flows of the PSDBM, pwede bang i-determine kung yung PSDBM did in fact strictly follow its own guidelines when it produced and published, if it did, price monitoring reports for PPEs?
I cannot recall it, Madam Chair.
And did the Secretary or any member of the DBM Execom rely on published PPE price monitoring reports when DBM itself and perhaps other members of the Execom asked about, and dito pupunta na ako dun sa mga misteryo na baka pwede niyong resolbahin na, pati kayo, DBM, other members of the Execom asked about the very high prices of PPEs that were being secured via negotiated procurement.
What's the question?
Pinagbasihan din po ba ng DBM Secretary yung sariling price monitoring reports ng PSDBM tungkol sa PPEs? Kasi naalala ko po nung panahong iyon, Mr. Lau, pati po ang DBM Secretary at ibang miyembro ng Execom nagtataka publicly sa mataas na presyo ng PPEs.
I cannot answer that, Madam Chair.
Alright, sige. Ganito na lang, Mr. Lau. Ito, tungkol sa presyo ng mga PPEs. Meron po akong table dito, procurement by PSDBM, just from April to May, 2 months lang. last year. Meron ditong 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 contractors within those 2 months of April to May 2020. Ang average po na unit price ng PPE na kinontrata sa kanila ay 1,858 pesos and 38 centavos. Interesante, misteryoso ito Mr. Lau because during those same 2 months of April to May 2020, the DOH price freeze, price for PPEs, was only 950. So kalahati po nitong average of 1,800 plus sa 11 contractors na ito. At interesante pa, misteryoso pa, sino-sino itong mga contractors? Ay, hindi ko babasahin yung 11 pangalan, but perhaps the 4 most interesting names, kasi bilyon po ang inaward na contract sa kanila, would include Chushen Company Limited, 1.03 billion pesos worth. Yung Suzhou Construction Machinery Corporation, Importation and Exportation Company Limited. I don't know kung anong ginagawa ng isang construction machinery group sa PPE production. Ang kanilang kontrata ay 1.8 billion pesos. At ang Wenhua Development Industrial Company, 1.3 billion pesos ang kontrata. Ang pinakamalaki, 3.8 billion pesos worth of PPEs, Pharmally Pharmaceutical Corporation. Yung Pharmally na paulit-ulit nating naririnig sa hearing na ito. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Lau, ito bang Pharmally Pharmaceutical Corporation na binigyan ng PSDBM under your watch ng kontratang worth 3.8 billion pesos, ito rin ba yung same or affiliated with na Pharmally International Holding Corporation based in Taiwan? Ito rin po ba yun?
I am not aware of that, Madam
You're
Chair.
not aware po. Siguro naman dapat nag-due diligence kayo sa lalo na yung pinakamalaking inawardan na kontrata. In any case, if you're telling the committee hindi kayo aware noon, aware po ba kayo kahit ngayon na itong Pharmally International charged po siya with financial fraud? Kung ito yung parehong firm, this is the same firm whose chairman was issued an arrest warrant. This is the same firm, kung ito yung pareho, which was delisted on the Taiwanese Stock Exchange because of those charges of financial fraud. So, anong due diligence ang ginagawa ng PSDBM vis-a-vis these suppliers? Lalo na yung nakakuha ng pinakamalaking kontrata, 3.8 billion pesos at a doubly priced average of 1,800 per PPE set, kahit ang mismong price freeze ng DOH ay 950 pesos lang. And by the way, kahit na mayroong, hindi po totoong walang supplied domestically, mayroong may mga CONWEP, CPMP, Confederation of Philippine Manufacturers of PPEs, na nag-offer ng quality, pumasa sa standards ng DOH at di hamak na mas murang PPEs sa DOH through PSDBM. Mr. Lau.
Madam Chair, may I be allowed to proceed? First, these companies that we initially had contractual relations, that was the time when sarado po ang economy and wala pong supply. We have to relay through our diplomatic channels. We contacted, our office contacted the embassies, all our embassies, our ambassadors, our special envoys, and even Ambassador Wang of China. We even conducted, I think we have records in the office that we have meetings, Zoom meetings with different embassies and ambassadors during the time. Because
may mga YouTube meetings pa, no? Ng iba't ibang korporasyong ito.
Madam Chair, we would just like to clarify the price freeze of DTI of 900 pesos. I think that was for the kasi may layman's term ng PPE and may technical term ng PPE. The layman's term of PPE is the coverall. But technically, when you say PPE, it's a multiple item that will protect a person from being infected. The items that we procured at 1,800 is ano po yan? That's a 8-item piece or sometimes 9-piece item or 10-piece item. So hindi siya isang item, hindi po coverall. Multiple po yan. May coverall, may lab gown, kasali dyan ang apron, kasali ang gloves, kasali ang shoe cover, head cover, face shield, goggles, face mask na N98, N95 na mask. Ito ba? I'm not sure if
So 8 to 10 pieces.
However, yung sa DTI na price fees, I think na 900, that's the coverall. And hindi po kasi na lahat na yung 1/8, hindi siya procured at one time. The first items that we procured, it has to be picked up in China because wala pong walang flights and wala po itong commercial vessels na available. So we asked the course through the Philippine Air Force and the Navy to pick it up through Secretary of National Defense, Delfin Lorenzana, to have it pick up. Yung subsequent naman po, nabili namin na 1819, sila na po nag-deliver dito sa atin kasi open na yung economy. Yung Conweb naman po, we assisted Conweb actually. Conweb and DTI and I discussed it thoroughly and we even endorsed them to DOH and in fact we assisted them with field jets and FDA para dun sa registration lahat. They were able to supply in a bidding sa Bayanihan 2. Sa Bayanihan 1 pa kasi ma'am, hindi pa po sila ready. They were still making their, they call that, sa DTI calls that repurposing their factories because I think Conweb is a garments company, as a group of garments company, and they were planning to repurpose it kasi wala ang stock, wala ang silang business and they have to provide for their employees. So DTI...
They repurposed it on the request of government, on your request.
Yes, we requested it, DTI and PSDBM. Both. DOH taught them, I think, sa standards. Ang biggest problem po ni Conweb during that time, na hindi rin po natin masagot kasi we were writing letters to DOH and hindi rin po masagot ni DOH, is their coverall is within standards. The fabric is within standards. The problem is yung seams, yung mga tahi like this one dito, kailangan ng blue strip na heat seal para hindi po tatagos whatever virus na ma-encounter ng person wearing. They do not have that heat seal. So it's the same problem with the Korean supplier kasi ang Koreans din, nagpadala din ng mga PPEs dito that they want to supply. Yung mga importers or exporters ng Korean, mga companies doon, wala din silang heat seal. So it took Conweb, I think, 1 more month to buy just that heat seal kasi hindi natin nobody was ready to make a decision. So PSDBM cannot change the rules kasi walang mag-decide whether i-accept yan na walang heat seal or hindi. So DOH has to make a decision kung ano. And during that time, we were also conservative. Until now, conservative pa rin si DOH, hindi pa rin tinanggal yung blue seal na heat seal. So Conweb needed to import it. Hindi lang Conweb, marami pong mga local companies during that time were starting to send machines, buy these machines. But they were able to join the bidding sa Bayanihan 2. Sa Bayanihan 1, I confirm ma'am, medyo mahirap talaga during that time. Yung series of event, 60 days, 90 days is mahaba po masyado yan during that time. Even 5 days was very long during that time because of the given situation. Ang isa pang pinakamalaking problema namin during the time is if suppliers want to supply to us, I have to call IAPF kasi they come from other provinces and we have to open lanes for them to come. Yung iba nga, kawawa masyado, galing sa Taytay, nagdala ng mga mga PPE na tela and we cannot buy it. So that's very, di ba, disheartening but there's nothing we can do.
Well, Mr. Lau, ang main concern, isang main concern
Wrap
naman
up.
dito ay, Mr. Chairman?
Please wrap up.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Mr. Chairman, no, even if you add up the prices of those individual items or components ng isang PPE set, kahit idagdag pa natin yung presyo ng mga individual items na yan to the price freeze price, mas mababa pa rin kesa sa prices given by the awarded contractor. So, and as I said earlier, we are not, Mr. Lau, we are not in the business here as members of the Blue Ribbon Committee to compare apples with oranges. We are definitely comparing apples with apples. So, in the next round, babalikan ko pa rin lalo na itong misteryosong pharmaceutical corporation na ito. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll just reserve my other questions for the next round. Salamat po.
Thank you very much. Just a very quick follow-up on the questions of Senator Hontiveros. You said you bought it at 1,800 with shoe cover and everything?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Just for the record, we bought it at 740 on March 24, 2020, and there were less quantities, no? Now, don't you think that if you buy a lot of quantities, you should be lower in price?
It depends on at present, Mr. Chair, yun po ang nangyayari. But during that time kasi, Mr. Chair, when we were scampering on April and May.
I understand that. I understand that. That gas-gas na yan eh. Lahat tayo nag-i-scamper nung araw. Pero if you predicted it, and because you are the sourcing agency of the government, dapat you are always, di ba, dapat naghahanda kayo kung any event happens.
Yes,
you anticipate that you could have an earthquake and you will need a lot of tents or you will need a lot of equipment. Na-anticipate nyo na yan. Katulad to, nagkaroon ng pandemic. You should have anticipated already kung ilan yan. Kahit na paano meron kang minimum na magagawa. And you already have deals na nakausap nyo. Hindi deals, you already scouted the terrain where you're gonna buy it, di ba? Because may mga libro yan sa China eh. Kung saan ka bibili. Tama yung tanong ni Senator Antiveros eh. Ako nagtataka ako. Yung isa, magda-supply sa iyo, agricultural company. Yung isa, industrial company. Yung isa, anong kinalaman nila sa PPE? Yung ba ang primary goal nila? Ang alam ko, they are in, maritime industry. So, nakakagulat. Dapat malaman ninyo at ng presidente na nakakagulat yung ginagawa nyo na kung kayo naghanda, hindi kayo pagdududahan. Ngayon sinasabi ko sa inyo, nakuha ng Red Cross ay 740 pesos ang basic PPE with shoes, with mask and everything. Pero kayo 1,800. It doesn't mean anything. As far as I'm concerned, mas maliit ang kinuha namin, kayo mas marami. Tataka lang ako bakit mas mataas yung sa inyo. Alright? On that note, I will now go to the next. You want to answer?
Sir, can I answer?
This one, Charlie, I think he wants to answer.
Yes, sir. Actually, sir, I'm in charge of the...
Secretary Galvez, sorry. Did you want to answer on the Secretary now?
Yes, sir. Actually, sir, I'm in charge of the production of the PPE during those times. And
yes. Okay.
Sir, the prices of the PPE during those times is 1,600 to 1,800. In fact, the difference is that what we are buying is a medical grade PPE. These are the one being demanded by the hospitals, and we have tested it that during the time that we have bought the PPE, our casualties have been reduced dramatically. During those times that we have been buying the PPE, 37 doctors already died, and there are many doctors that have been intubated. There are no sources, only sources that we can have in bulk, because we will be buying all the hospitals in the Philippines. So we need millions. So no one from the country and no one else can produce that much because many countries are hoarding the PPEs. So only China can provide that. So that we bought that PPEs because we are much needing and there is an urgency of buying.
Secretary Galvez, your answer is probably correct and I don't doubt it. But it takes a little bit of foresight on the part of DOH na dapat alam natin kung anong bibili natin. In other words, DOH will say we have a need kahit na walang pandemic o ano. At kung may need, nakahanda na yung specifications yan. Kaya nga sabi ko, ang primary agency that should buy it because it's an emergency as well is DOH kasi alam nyo kung anong bibilhin. Sinabi ko lang yung sa Red Cross just to show you na may makukuha. Hindi naman siguro ganun karami. Hindi ako nagyayabang sa inyo. Pero ang sinasabi ko lang, nakuha nyo ng 1.8, nakuha ng Red Cross ng 740, si China rin. Pero ang sinasabi ko lang, mag-ingat tayo because this is not the last time we're gonna have a pandemic. And dapat yung ilalagay dyan sa DOH at saka ilalagay dyan sa PS DBM ay nakahandang mag-anticipate ng mga kakailanganin natin. Now, Secretary, quickly lang, Secretary Duque, yung po bang meron kayong assessment kung anong kailangan nyo? Kasi ayoko dapat tayong needs-driven, hindi yung supply-driven. Kasi pag sila sabi niya yan, it-reinforces, kailangan namin yun, may namamatay. Ang mangyayari niya, supply-driven na yan. Dakma na lang tayo ng dakma. But kailangan talaga yun. I don't blame you. I'm not gonna blame you for that. But if you look at all the stuff that you are buying in the millions, in the billions of pesos, talagang may karapatan magtanong ang other branch of the government. Now, Secretary Duque, can you answer that, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Compounded kasi yung problem nung January of 2020. Nobody expected naman that the Taal volcano was going to erupt. So lahat ng stocks namin that we procured based on projections, no, ubos lahat eh. Talagang halos we had to distribute to communities, families in the Batangas, all the communities surrounding Taal. And so,
Secretary Duque, excuse me, I'm willing to stipulate na talagang nataranta kayo talaga. I'm willing to stipulate that na
yes, sir.
this is an
Yes, sir.
emergency situation. You
Yes,
have to
sir.
produce. You have to produce. Ang sinasabi ko lang, malfeasance, misfeasance, and feasance goes into foresight, goes into skill. It can also go into lack of foresight, lack of skill, and negligence. Kaya dapat, kung ginawa ng gobyerno yan way back in 1989, na naglagay tayo ng tinatawag na DBMPS, dapat talaga nag-uusap-usap ang mga miyembro ng kabinete. May mga scenarios tayo. In case of a nuclear war, we have that in the record, by the way. In case of a nuclear war, or in case of an attack, like what happened in Afghanistan kahapon, biglang inatake yung mga Amerikano, 18 soldiers are killed right away, 90 soldiers are wounded, then 90 people are killed. Nakahanda sigurado yan, kaya may mga tents yan eh. Ang sinasabi ko lang, I'm going into the elements of misconduct, malfeasance, and non-feasance. Malfeasance. No? So having said that, I think I've gotten my answer already. Kasi kami rin tinamaan ng Taal eh. And we also gave a lot of face masks there. And I think the governor will bear me out on that. Thank you very much. The chair now recognizes, and thank you, Senator Antiveros. The chair now recognizes the Honorable Senator Angara, and then afterwards, Senator Lacson will be recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to our colleagues and to all the resource persons. I'd like to take up or continue from some of the questions our colleagues have posed to the DOH about underspending. And the figure from DOH is that around 24 billion is the unobligated amount. And Senator Risa, Senator Lacson, I think previously asked already about this, but I just like to drill down a bit further, Mr. Chairman, and ask why was the money, for instance, for the assistance for indigent patients in the amount of 2 billion not spent, Mr. President? Especially we're in the middle of a pandemic, and from all reports, marami talaga nangangailangan ng tulong. So I'm just wondering bakit hindi nagastos yung 2 billion for assistance to indigent patients. So 2.3 billion to be exact, Mr. President.
Yeah. Can you just give me a minute, Mr. Chairman? Just a minute, Mr. Chairman. Can we, Mr. Chairman, can we just please, I'm sorry, no, my apologies. USEC Roger Tongan to please give his rejoinder to this question.
All right, quickly please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and your honors. Now, the reason why there was a 2.2, this is a continuing appropriation. So, tuloy-tuloy pa rin na dina-download namin ito sa ating mga DOH hospitals together with the LGU hospitals. Now, another reason is most of our DOH hospitals have canceled some elective or yung mga procedures nila sa hospital, and they only admitted for emergencies. And some of our clients, most especially yung mga mahirap nating mga kababayan, naka-lockdown yung mga kanilang areas, at the same time, hindi po sila nagpapa-check up. So anyway, since it's a CONAP, continuous pa rin namin na dina-download po yan until now. And at present, based on the 2.2 billion, ang naiiwan na lang po dyan is around 669 million po from the 2.2. Since we are continuously downloading this to the different DOH and LGU hospitals and to the regions po. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusek. Mr. Chairman, can we get an assurance that that money will be spent and will not lapse at the end of the year?
Yes po.
And it will be spent for the purpose, the assistance to the indigent patients po.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we will reassure the committee that this will be spent.
Okay, I'm satisfied with that for now, and maybe we'll check further down the line, Mr. Chairman. At dito naman po sa immunization and sa HFEP and sa HRH, marami ring unobligated amounts. Let's tackle them one by one, Mr. Chairman. Sa health facilities enhancement, there's another 1.8 B unobligated. So I'd like to ask about that for the reason. Kasi marami ring nangangailangan mga sa probinsya, for instance, they need to upgrade their health facilities. So kung bakit hindi pa nagagastos to, since this is actually appropriations from the 2019 and 2020 budget.
Mr. Chairman, can we have USEC Lilibeth David to give the rejoinder to the question?
David, please answer right away. Secretary Elizabeth Lilibeth David, named after the Queen of England. Your Majesty. Alam na alam ni Senator Angara yan, galing sa England din.
I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, you're filling in the dead era.
Yeah. Try to.
Mr. Chairman, she's already there. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes,
May
yes,
I just
yeah.
request po kung yung specific question, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I'll happy to repeat it, Mr. Chair, Yusek. Yung HFEP, we have a figure here of 1.8 billion out of the total allotment for fiscal year 2020 and the continuing appropriations for 2019. There is 1.8 billion which has not yet been obligated. HFEP being the health facilities enhancement. So again, what's the reason for not obligating it as we go into the 9th month of this year, and what do you intend to do with those funds, Mr. Chairman? Baka nakamute ho. Wala po kami naririnig, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you po. Mr. Chair, was that for, did you say 2019 po?
It's for both 19 and 20. So it will lapse at the end of this year if you do not spend it. So I'm wondering, anong plano nyo dyan?
And the answer
Mr. Chair,
is?
for 2019, for the amount of 3.8 billion.
No,
These
let's
are
just combine it. Let's take it together, because if you combine fiscal year 2020, there's 1.4 billion. For 2019, there's 400 million. So pinagsama mo, that's 1.8 billion.
1.8.
Parehong maglalapse yun. So what's the plan? Or at least maybe the 19 has lapsed already. But yung 1.4 or 1.8, anong plano doon? Magagastos ba yun? Will it go towards the government's COVID effort? Kasi right now, kumbaga, all hands on deck dapat di ba? Lahat ng hindi nagagamit na pondo, dapat i-direct dun sa COVID effort. So, it appears to us, and maybe we might be mistaken, na medyo wala yung urgency. Pero baka naman nandyan, may plano kayo. Sabihin nyo lang sa amin para maintindihan namin.
Yes, and if I might add, Senator Angara and Mr. Chair, this was also flagged by COA. It's very clear in the audit report about the HFEB.
The COA flagged around 11 billion, but actually there's 24 billion that's unobligated. So we'd like to get to the bottom of it. Because we don't want, if it's a systemic problem, let's tackle the system. But if it's a situational problem, then let us know how can we address it, diba? We're here to provide solutions naman. We're not here to find fault. But without understanding the problem, how can we provide solutions, Mr. Chairman?
Excuse me, Mr. Elizabeth, can you please answer the question as forthrightly as possible? You're taking
Hindi naman mahirap yung question, Mr. Chair, diba? Merong hindi nagastos na pondo. It's either 1.4B, 1.8B that will lapse at the end of the year, and it's dedicated, it has been appropriated for a particular program para tulungan po yung ating mga pampublikong hospital, pampublikong clinic. So anong plan dyan?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, these are various projects in our different regions.
And I have to tell you that I'm not made of wood. It's a small matter. Go ahead. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, these are various projects in our various regions and in our various hospitals. And for 2020 po, we have already obligated 8.2. That's 99% po. For 2021, for this year po, we have already obligated 29%. That's 2.6 billion. And for the others po, they're still in the process of procurement in various stages, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you for the information, but it's somewhat unresponsive or not directed, Mr. Chair, kasi tinatanong nga natin yung 1.8B na nakalagay either in 2019 or 2020 budget. So can I just get if hindi masagot at this moment, can I just get very precise details in the future? I would rather I'd appreciate a more precise answer that was the product of careful study rather than an imprecise answer, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we reassure that as soon as we get the particulars of this particular item, we will send it by hopefully within the day, Mr. Chairman, to the court.
Thank you. Salamat, Mr. Chairman. I'll jump now to the National Immunization Program, which
you will send it in 10 minutes. I'm sorry, Senator Sani. I mean, she's just looking. The answer is, the question is very clear. I don't want you to spend the whole day again, then we'll call for wait another day for another meeting. Spend the next half an hour, if you like, to look for the answer to the question. Then come back. I will call you back and let you come in right away. Is that all right, Senator Angara?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. You have to push the envelope.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd now like to return to the National Immunization Program. There was a total of 8.2 billion allotted by Congress in both 2020 and 2019 for the National Immunization Program. And tinanong po yan ni Senator Risa, bakit hindi nagastos yung 4.2 approximately billion dyan? And ang sagot ng Secretary, and he also was assisted by Secretary Galvez later and Yusek Hoven, was that the loan agreements were not entered into. So I'm saying, are you saying this 4 billion was on top of the 84 billion appropriation that we put in the 2021 budget, meaning you realign funds from the 2020 budget under the National Immunization Program at i-realign nyo to purchase vaccines? Kasi when the 2020 budget was being debated, wala pa yung issue ng COVID vaccines, di ba? Pumasok lang yan when we debated the 2021. So I'm just curious Paano nangyari yun? Yung sagot, yung tanong ni Senator Risa is an item that belongs to the 2020 and 2019 budget. Pero yung sagot is an item that belongs to the 2021 budget. So I'm just curious about that answer. Kasi you talked about contracts which were not perfected before the end of the year, etc. Pero when the 2020 budget was made, I assume it was for the regular immunization. So you're talking about yung tigdas, yung measles, etc., which is the program under the law authored by Senator Pia, yung compulsory immunization, di ba? So I'm just curious, could you clarify that, Secretary?
Mr. Chairman, I do not recall any repurposing of the budget meant for the National Immunization Program towards the vaccines for COVID. But anyway, I'm looking into the particulars. Again, with my apologies, Mr. Chairman. I'll get into this. I'm just getting the team to dig up all of these figures and to give a clearer picture of this.
Sige po. Maybe I can help refresh, Mr. Chairman. In the 2020 budget for the National Immunization Program, the DOH has an item of 7.5 billion. Dito po, 43.7% lang ang naobliga, meaning nakontrata o nagamit, which is 3.3. 43.7% representing 3.3 billion. So yun yung tinanong ni Senator Risa, bakit anong nangyari doon sa 4.2 billion na unobligated? At ang sagot ninyo, hindi kami nakakontrata ng COVID vaccines. So first of all, that money was not intended by Congress for COVID vaccines. Pero if you took a shortcut and you declared savings and you said it's for COVID vaccines, that's okay for us because sa amin, Senator Drilon is listening. Importante na madagdagan nga yung pera para sa COVID vaccination. But we just want to understand ano ba yung aksyon ng gobyerno dito? Sadya ba yun na hindi ginastos para sa ibang bakuna para madala sa COVID vaccines? So kasi nag-appropriate kami sa Bayanihan 2 at saka sa 2021 budget ng a total of 84 billion. So we're wondering kung may 4.2 pa dito, dapat may 88 billion ho tayo, di ba? Kasi may 4 billion from 2020, tapos 2021, meron 74 billion, tapos Bayanihan 2, may 10 billion. So may dagdag na 4 billion. Is that an accurate portrayal? Could you maybe you can choose not to answer it now when you want to tell us, but syempre may effect din yun sa immunization program ng gobyerno. If children are not getting their immune shots, they may not get COVID, but they may get other sicknesses. Baka may other outbreaks ho tayo sa probinsya. And again, I realize it's a pandemic, so baka mahirap magbakuna, kaya that's why you were not able to vaccinate or use up your vaccination budget, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman, can we just get a response, at least initially?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I do recall is that the National Immunization Program continued. We did not stop it because we realized the importance of this. This is a public health policy that we cannot afford to stop. But although, of course, there was great difficulty. But let me just, Mr. Chairman, request that you recognize USEC Rosette Vergere, under which program is lodged. USEC Rosette Vergere, please. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, may she be recognized, please? Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Yes, please.
USEC Vergere, please.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to all of the honorable senators. Mr. Chair, the 4.2 billion which was allocated for our national immunization program in 2020, our supposed procurement was for the PCV vaccines, the pneumococcal conjugate vaccines. But because this went through the Health Technology Assessment Council deliberations and evaluation, so we had to wait for the results. And when the results were out, it was recommended that the multi-dose vials would be procured instead of the single-dose vials. So this pneumonial PCV vaccines initially was 4.2 billion as allocated or proposed plan, but because of this multi-dose vialing, it went down to 3.2 billion, and then the others were spent for this vaccination and other COVID-19 response for the country.
Mr. Chair, I'm a little confused because you've cited some numbers. Is that you're saying the unobligated amount has already been obligated, or you're referring to the 3 billion that you obligated outside of the 4 billion? Because your total budget is 7.5 billion for 2020.
Mr. Chair, if I may respond. Yes,
Mr. Chairman, I may allow you to respond.
Mr. Chairman, if I may respond, sir. Thank you po.
Ako pa sinasabi yan eh. We're not made of wood, you know.
I'm sorry po, Mr. Chairman. So, yes, sir. So, we have, as I've said, the 4.2 billion was initially planned for the PCV vaccines, but based on the Health Technology Assessment Council's evaluation and recommendation that
you don't have to repeat that part, Yusek.
Yes.
That's very deep. Those are details which are not pertinent. The question is, na-obligate na ba yung 4.2 billion? Yun ang tanong. So are you saying, because you saying it's been multi-vax, vial, whatever the technical jargon is, you're saying that 4.2 has been obligated, 3.2 has been obligated. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Senator Angara, the money has been obligated.
When was the date of obligation? Because your website says, as of a certain date, you had 24 billion of unobligated amounts. So I'm curious, when was it obligated?
Mr. Chairman and Senator Angara, it became a CONAP of 2020, this money, so we were able to obligate this year, sir.
Now, what's the exact date of entering into the contract or obligation?
If I may...
Doesn't have to tell me if it's a Monday or a Thursday, but please give me the month at least.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Senator, if I can just get the documents for a while.
Okay, sige. No, you can just submit it to us, no? Because I'm just wondering why your website says there's 24 billion in obligated and you're telling me it's already been obligated. Baka you just need to update your website. It's as simple as that.
Excuse me, Senator Angara. Well,
yes,
you're looking for it, a very quick interception, if you will.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman.
Let me just ask Secretary Duque. Sanofi paid you 1.4+ billion pesos for the remaining balance of the drug that was not, the vaccine that was not utilized. Is that correct?
I think it was about 1 billion 100 plus, Your Honor.
Whatever, it's over 1 billion.
Yes, sir. Mga 1 billion 100 plus remitted to the Bureau of Treasury.
So you have extra money there, and you might want to be able to use that to pay all your obligations. And the other thing is, the Court of Appeals decision ordered you guys to because the contractors of that supposed elementary school or public school health centers that will be used by the public also were never finished, and the Court of Appeals. In a decision, Department of Health versus J. Bros Construction Corporation, in joint agreement with Fujian Songma Construction Engineering Company, herein represented by its authorized managing officer Balota, it was shown that only 270 barangay health stations were completed out of the 3,100 units for barangay health stations phase 1 of the Department of Health, with a total contract price of 4,456,592,239 pesos and 41 centavos. The court directed the private contractor to return the mobilization fee already received in the amount of 668 million. Nangangapa tayo ng pera. Naibalik na ba yan? Hindi na nga nagawa. Nabalik ba yung pera?
Mr. Chairman, can we have Assistant Secretary Cha Grande, who has been into this from the very start?
Of course. Yeah. Cha Grande, please give me a grande answer.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, and to all the members of the Senate. The case, which was decided by the Court of Appeals, Mr. Chair, is already pending before the Supreme Court. J. Bros Corporation, a joint venture of Zongma Corporation, filed their appeal on that decision of the Court of Appeals. And further, Mr. Chair, as to the amount of money, yun pong natitira po na pera po ay naibalik po sa Bureau of Treasury. Yung una pong covered po ng letters of credit for phase 1 ay request po ng Department of Health to Land Bank na ibalik po. So with that po, yung phase 2
naman po, make is binibigyan kayo ng pera ng government, halimbawa yung sa National Immunization Program, ginamit bigla sa Sanofi na nawala doon sa listahan ng mga identified for immunization. Tapos tinatanong ko lang kung nabalik, sayang yan. Nangangailangan tayo ng pera, pati ito. Galing naman ito sa retirement fund ng mga employees, kinuha at ngayon pinabalik sa inyo. Parang nagkakamali ata kayo palagi sa paggastos. Dapat maingat kayo. That's the only point I want to make. Thank you. Importante yan because sayang ang pera, sayang ang oras. Go ahead, please. Are you ready now, Ms. to answer?
Yes, sir. To continue, Mr. Chair, yung pong phase 2 po ay naibalik na rin.
Mr. Chairman.
Ay, sorry.
Sorry, it's a little matter, but I really find it offensive. Thank you. Let me get back to. Are you ready to answer already the questions? Ms. Bergeri, di ba ikaw tinatanong doon?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. This was the funds were obligated last April of 2021, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I continue, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Angara, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yusek, thank you for that information. So, of the 4.2 unobligated, you're saying 3.2 was obligated. How about the remaining 1 billion, Yusek?
Mr. Chairman, the remaining 1 billion was allocated for warehousing, hauling, and brokerage for 88 million plus. For the augmentation support to selected regional offices for our MR-OPV, the oral polio vaccine supplemental immunization activity at 361 million. And then we also were able to procure COVID-19 PPEs and vaccine ancillaries at 428 million. Also, the fund transfer to DFA for the vaccination of Filipino children in alternative learning centers in Sabah. That's about 14.8 million. So these were all obligated na po, sir, and deliveries for these PCV vaccines are ongoing po.
So magkano dun sa 1 billion ang na-obligate or naiwan? Is it fully obligated? The 1 billion that you saved when you bought the multi-vial vaccines?
Yes, sir. Fully obligated na po, sir.
Okay. How about the 10 billion that you've been given under the 2021 National Immunization Program? 2.5 billion of which is for COVID vaccines. Ano na ang utilization nun, ma'am?
Mr. Chairman and Senator Angara, if you can give us a minute just for us to get the documents, sir.
Yeah, sure. Can I just go to another topic while someone is getting that, Mr. Chairman? If that's all right. Is that all right, Yusek, that you will go to another matter while someone is getting the data?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Opo.
Okay. I'll just ask about the Bayanihan funds. We were given the data that there's 6 billion unutilized by the DOH from Bayanihan 1 and 2. And the Bayanihan 1, there's a 1 billion item that was reverted or lapsed. So it was returned to the Treasury. And there is 5 billion unobligated for Bayanihan 2. Could you tell us what items were unobligated? Particularly, what is that 1 billion that lapsed and was given back to the Treasury? And what is the 5 billion that lapsed or that was unobligated under Bayanihan 2, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, may I respectfully request that Director Rowena Laura of Finance Administration to be recognized. Thank you, sir.
Gentleman concerned is recognized, please.
Thank you. Director Laura, please.
Director Laura, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon po, Your Honors. Regarding po sa unobligated po which have lapsed, if I'm correct, sir? Yun po ba yung tanong?
Andun lang sa Bayanihan 1 and 2 po, yung Mr. Chairman, yung 1 billion ng Bayanihan 1. What was that intended for and why was it not spent? Given that Bayanihan 1 was a emergency measure. Tapos itong 5 billion naman sa ilalim ng Bayanihan 2. Bakit hindi rin nagastos yon, Mr. Chairman?
Okay, sir. Regarding po muna dun sa 1 billion na natira under the Bayanihan 1, it is exactly 976 million, which we considered as savings na po from procurement of test kits, and other laboratory commodities po in the amount of 480 million. And then we have also savings from the procurement of capital outlay for equipment and rehab of facilities in a amount of around 130 million. While the remaining balance po na 366 million po is allocated and downloaded to operating units for HRH emergency hiring. However, at that time, there were limitations in the number of applicants, of course, due to the fear of the pandemic. Yung 5.1...
Mr. Chairman, medyo mabilis yung figures, no? Can you tell us again, what is that item about HRH? 300 million to HRH hiring?
366 million, sir. Excess po siya ng mga dinownload namin sa iba't ibang operating units, sir. Especially regional office and hospitals for...
Oh, you're saying it's a savings from the HRH program?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
For what year?
2020, sir. Under the Bayanihan 1 and partly Bayanihan 2, sir.
Okay, kasi meron din akong datos dito na meron kayong unobligated for HRH or Human Resources for Health Deployment, meaning hiring of nurses, benefits of nurses and doctors, etc. Meron kayong unobligated of 1 billion. So, bukod pa dun sa unobligated nyo sa Bayanihan 1, meron pa kayong 1 billion na hindi nyo na-obliga for HRH. Alam naman natin na umaangal yung ating mga nurses that they are not getting their benefits, di nila nakukuha. Umaangal sila na bakit ang starting salary lang nila is lower than what is statutorily provided, di ba? Kasi if I'm not mistaken, ipasok ko na po dito, Mr. Chairman, yung sinasabi ng mga nurse, bakit sila kino-contractual at ang binibigay na salary is salary grade 11, 23,000 lang. Eh ang nasa batas is salary grade 15 or 33,000. Hindi ba pwedeng gamitin doon yung pera na gawing... First of all, bakit hindi sila napa-permanent, Mr. Chairman?
Kung pangalawang tanong niyo po regarding sa HRH deployment, I think this is a regular program of the DOH. Yun po yung may line item po tayo. Tama po kayo. Nurses and doctors deployment program po ito. I think the better person to ask regarding this program po is the director for the HHRDB. But if I can proceed with the next
parang nahihilo na kami sa kakapasa. Parang nanonood kami ng basketball. Pasa ng bola, Mr. Chairman. we are getting, it's like watching a basketball or a tennis game. They're hitting the ball palaging back and forth lagi. So,
yes. Mr. Chairman, if I may augment the statement of Senator Angara, kanina ka pa po, parang traffic policeman lang ito kausap natin. Pasa dito, pasa doon. We cannot get direct answers from the Secretary.
But anyway, to try to get to the bottom of it, Your Honor, Minority Leader and Mr. Chairman, perhaps we can direct it to that person. But sana may isang repository of information tayo, di ba? Kasi ano naman, that's part of accountability, di ba? May pondo binigay sa inyo. Alam nyo dapat saan ginamit.
Saka pag naghingi kayo ng budget, alam nyo talaga kung saan nyo dadalhin. Hindi nyo inaasa. Pag hindi nyo alam kung saan dadalhin, talaga mawawala yan.
So who is the person that you wanted to be recognized, Secretary Duque? Who is the person in charge?
We have USEC Leopoldo Bong Vega or Director Rowena Laura.
Secretary, right?
Yes, Undersecretary.
They are in charge of the HRH program, Mr. Secretary Duque, Mr. Chairman.
Under them, the admin and finance management. Can we have them recognize, Your Honor, respectfully?
Who do you want me to recognize? Vega first.
Yes, Leopoldo Bong Vega, Your Honor.
Before Mr. Vega, who do you want recognized?
Leopoldo Bong Vega. USEC Bong Vega.
That's what I said. Mr. Yusek Bong Vega is recognized. Leopoldo Vega.
balance.
Your Honors, Mr. Chairman, with respect to the query on the HRH, our office specifically for the augmentation of the emergency hiring for Bayanihan 1 and 2 CERT, and for the HRH, as mentioned by Senator Angara, which means that the plantilla positions and the contractual positions that we have in the Department of Health, that is under HHRB, sir. And that's under USEC Villaverde, sir.
Dito ba si Yusek Villaverde?
I'm sorry.
You know, in basketball, it's very good to pass to share the ball, ano? Maganda yun. That is commendable pag basketball ito. Nagpapasahan tayo, pero pag accountability, medyo mahirap yata sundan, Mr. Chairman.
Kanina niyo pinasa ang sagot? Yusek Villaverde or something?
Yeah, it was I'm just wondering, I'm just trying to make sense, Mr. Chairman. Meron tayong unobligated amounts for health resources or human resources health, meaning hiring, salaries, etc. And yet, maraming nagrereklamo na why do they not get the entry level under the Nursing Act na salary grade 15? Bakit contractual lang sila? And I was told that the DOH has 13,700 contractuals, Your Honor, outside of those in the LGUs, no? Can I get a comment on that, Mr. Chairman?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, yung mga contractuals natin, we really would want to fill up our plantilla positions. But there are limitations. For example, the qualification standards are the limitations. No? Kaya they have to wait until they become qualified based on civil service rules and regulations. And so why not? I mean, we would like them immediately occupying plantilla positions for security of tenure and the full range of benefits entitlement. But yun lang nga po ay titingnan ko lang kung itong 13.5 million plantilla positions, kung ito po ba ay 13 unfilled, 13,428, which is 17%. Malaki-laki po ito of 80,308 total number of positions. Diba? So, yung ating total number of job order naman as 23,301 and 22% of the total 103,609 of our job orders. So, yan po ang breakdown. But we certainly support the position that the plantilla positions ought to be filled up as soon as possible. But again, there are limitations.
Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
sir.
Excuse me,
How
Senator
many
Angara.
vacant plantilla positions are there in the DOH, Mr.
Senator
Chairman?
Angara, just to follow your lead, no? Apropos to that, sinabi nila last week, and I can see Senator Ontiveros nodding, I'm betting the other senators will not about this. You said, the DBM said, na dumaan na yung salary standard na yan, grade, sa Executive Secretary, it's already been approved, and that, 3 days ago, you would have reported to the Senate na okay yan. Ano ba talaga ang status?
Your Honor, tama po kayo, yung budget circular lumabas lang itong August 25. So ito po yung modification of nurse positions dahil ito po ang appeal ng mga association ng nurses na ang kanila pong nurse 1 based on jurisprudence, salary grade 15. Yung nurse 2 naman, ginawa din nila SG15 na sabi namin hindi naman pwede yun kasi that is a relative demotion. Kasi nurse 2 ka, bakit SG15 pa ibibigay sa'yo? Dapat yung susunod. So pinaglaban po namin ito with the Office of the President and eventually the OP approved this and gave the directive to the DBM to ensure that there will be this amendment to the positions plus the budgetary support. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So what is it now? Are they going to get it or not?
Yeah, they're going to get it. That is for sure, based on the budget circular, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so that has been cleared, no?
Mr. Chairman, just to be logical about things, ang sinabi ni Secretary Duque, kaya nila hindi napupuno yung permanent positions is because there are civil service requirements. And then he follows up by saying that okay na dahil dumaan na sa OP and they will get their full position. But if there are civil service requirements to be overcome, they will not get it based on his answer, Mr. Chairman. Hindi ba logical yun?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, there is a screening process, Mr. Chairman. So
I'd like to drill down on this point, Mr. Chairman, if I may be allowed, Secretary Duque. How many vacant plantilla positions are there in the DOH?
Right now, Your Honor, we have total number of positions 80,308, and unfilled is 13,428, representing 17%, Your Honor.
30,000.
Yes, these are all over, no? The central office, including Food and Drug Administration and the Bureau of Quarantine, the Centers for Health Development, 16 of them, the various hospitals, and also the treatment and rehabilitation center. So they're spread out, Your Honor, over different offices and different facilities. Thank you, Your Honor.
How many applicants do you have for these positions, Mr. Chairman?
I would like to ask can we just submit to you the granular data as
yes,
to the,
okay. With the broken down a breakdown of the positions, Mr. Chairman, and an indication based on the answer of Secretary Duque, how many are prevented of the applicants are prevented by civil service rules from being made permanent, di ba? Kasi yun ang concern natin eh. There are 13,700 contractuals and 30,000 vacant positions. Baka naman there is a way to speed up the filling of these positions. Kasi ang report is nag-aalisa na yung ating mga health professionals eh.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Lacson, Mr. Chair, is raising his hand.
Yes, with the permission of Senator Angara, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, certainly.
Yes, so this is, as I've been monitoring the questions and answers. This is not a question of funding, but a question of hiring. Is that correct?
Not really, because they're supposed to correct a bad state of affairs that dinemote pa yung mga nurses at tagal-tagal na binigay na nila tapos binabawi.
No,
yung
my
sinasabi naman ni
question...
Senator Angara, iba yun. There are so many plantillas available and they should have the money. And now sinasabi nila, pero you cannot do that without the civil service giving you the imprimatur.
Exactly my question, Mr. Chairman. I'd like
Yes.
to be clarified if this is not a question of funding, but hiring.
Well, whichever way you put it.
There's no problem with funding.
No problem with the funding. I think this budget circular is clear that the funding is available, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman. So it's hiring.
So it behooves the department to fast track the hiring process. Because
yes,
wala namang problema sa funding.
Opo, we are doing that, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman. We are really fast tracking it given the pandemic circumstances. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lacson. I just want to follow.
Mr. Chairman is raising
down on that. Let me bear down on that because a certain asset, Kim Robert De Leon, last Monday when we were having this hearing, said that it was already cleared and that you were going to have a consultation and that by this week, that should be settled already. So para kayo mga Indian giver eh. You'll say something tapos hindi gagawin tapos may dahilan na hindi magagawa. Hindi talaga kaya nagagalit ang mga tao. You know, you should look at the text messages I get from the nurses. Sinasabi lang nila yun pero hindi nangyayari. So what is it now? Are you going to finally close the door on this one?
Yeah, sir. After that meeting with ASEC Kim, kaya nga itong August 25 lang po, ay inilabas na nila itong budget circular. And this is only for the nurses, not for the other cadres of healthcare workers. Yun lang po, sir. Thank you.
So meron na kayong rason d'etat, batas, meron pa kayong funding. Okay na yan?
Yes, sir. Exactly, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to make a quick intervention on this topic.
Yes, yeah. Go ahead, Senator Cayetano. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
first of all, I'd like to thank our colleagues, no, because all of these questions, which many remain unanswered, will really help me with the budget of health, which I will defend. So thank you for the heads up, and I hope DOH will comply with the answers, whether now or later, because we'll still face the same questions in the budget hearings. But the point I wanted to make in this intervention is about the condition, the state of the nurses. I have yet to hear, I may have missed it, but in the LEDAC earlier today, I mentioned the amendment of the Nursing Act. This to me is very important in terms of addressing the shortage of health workers we have. Because this will elevate nurses to nurse practitioners or doctor's assistants, similar to the US. I haven't heard, I'm not the chair of the Committee on Health, so I do not know if you have discussed this with the Committee on Health in terms of priorities, but I think this is important in the discussion because it will give a career path to these nurses that even with the adjustments that we still cannot even deliver, pale in comparison to the offers that they have abroad. So this is a long-term plan that we need to put into place, and I've been hearing this issue from 2004 to about 2012, and then I no longer chair the Committee on Health, so I don't know where that's at, but I know at least that it's moved in the House, and I don't know where it's going to be in the Senate without a push coming from the department. Thank you.
I believe, Mr. Chairman, that, but I will validate. I know this has been incorporated in our Human Resource for Health Master Plan. Meron po yan yung career pathway po nila na makatulong sa kanila at what level of their professional growth. No? They can be put to maximum use or provide the services needed, especially in circumstances like what we have today. So let me just look into this again, but the specifics right now, my apologies, I don't have the specifics, Mr. Chairman, but I'll look into it, Mr. Chairman.
Just for clarity, Mr. Secretary, and to the committee, it can't be done without an amendment of the law. That career path ends with the current Nursing Act. So unless you push for that amendment of the Nursing Act, they have no power to, we have no power to give them an advancement in their career. That's why I'm asking if this is part of your priorities. Anyway, you can answer, as you said, you look into it, so that will suffice for now. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask anyone from the DOH, what is the state of our private hospitals? Are they in a good state at the moment in terms of are they adequately manned? Are they performing as they should be in terms of finances?
Mr. Chairman, if I may be allowed, the hospitals differ in many respects. Maybe after my statement, I could refer this to Yusek Bong Vega, who heads the One Hospital Command Center. But yes, it really depends on the level of the hospitals and their location. And by and large, the compensation asymmetry or inequality is a very serious issue that needs attention. I don't know if I'm sure by if there is a legislative fiat to accommodate to laws to address this. Yung healthcare worker ng private sector, talagang they pale in comparison with the public sector. And that's why, in fact, DOLE Secretary Benyo has been adamant about equalizing the compensation structure among healthcare workers in the public and private hospitals. So PhilHealth, of course, we cannot discuss this without the PhilHealth front and center. And But for now, let me just ask USEC Undersecretary Bong Vega to please please.
Senator Angara, you have 13 seconds to go. And the ball is in your...
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'll just put this out there for anyone to follow up on. What I wanted to drive at is the situation I've been hearing in private hospitals is quite dire. Nursing services are only at 30 to 50% of their usual nursing manpower. This was brought out in a Senate committee hearing last May. And the arrears from PhilHealth are over a year and total in the tens or 20s of billions. So ang tanong ko na lang siguro to any of our health officials is anong plano nila dito? Are we happy with this state of affairs to continue? Are we not moving towards improving this situation, Mr. Chairman? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, certainly moving forward, we would support programs or whatever. We really certainly no doubt about the need to uplift the
asking for your support, Secretary, Mr. Chairman. I'm asking if you have any ideas on how to solve this.
Yun na nga po, sir, yung funding issue for the compensation is one. And then number two, the PhilHealth continues to innovate payment or reimbursement mechanisms. Right now, they have the the debit credit payment mechanism, which is supposed to accelerate the payment of claims covering a certain period, but ostensibly mukhang hindi happy yung ating pong mga private hospital stakeholders. So we need to continue to look at areas to address this nagging issue. There are figures being bandied around na 80 billion daw yung utang ng PhilHealth. But PhilHealth says it's much, much lower than that. Parang asa 12 or 14 billion. Maybe President Geran can supplement my answers, Mr. Chairman. President Geran of PhilHealth, sir. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Geran, please answer.
Thank you.
Very fast.
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon po. At saka sa mga equally honorable senators po. Sa ngayon po, ang utang po natin sa mga hospitals, in process ito, nasa libro natin po is in process, is 21.1 billion po. This is a statement as of August 24, 2021 po. And of course, nabanggit na po ng ating kagalang-galang na sekretary na meron tayong fast tracking ng pagbayad natin sa ating partners. No? Yan ay mga HCIs. Ito, pinapatuloy po natin itong tinatawag natin na DCPM, Debit Credit Payment Method or mechanism. And base sa sa aking mga kasamaan dito is mga aabot po ito ng 100% ito is 17 millions, no? 17 billion rather. So kung 17 billion against 21, something like 4 billion na lang ang kulang. Para kung mayaman, no? 4 billion na lang ang kulang. And ano naman po, meron na tayong DCPM nung una, 60% na po na-release natin po. At saka yung meron pa tayong 40% na karagdagan na pagre-release. Kaya lang, ang ginagawa natin ngayon ay yung what we call this reconciliation para yung kabuuhan na 100% na unang 60% ay ma-release na. And dito rin po sa expanded, no? Expanded DCPM is from April 8 this year up to August 9, 2021. Itong sinasabi ko na mga something like 17 billion po. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm not going to ask any new question, because my time is up. But we have a hanging question, Mr. Chairman, to the DOH regarding the utilization of the 2021 National Immunization Program and the HRH, Mr. Chairman.
Virginia, are you ready to answer that already?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Senator Angara. Yes, sir. For our 2021 National Immunization Program budget, we were already able to obligate 8.2 billion out of this 10 billion. And we are just awaiting for the notice to proceed for the PCV vaccines of about 2.2 billion pesos. And then we have ongoing procurement process for the human papilloma virus vaccine for 58 million, and the duties and taxes for our routine vaccines at 46 million, which comprises about 2.3 billion, which will be obligated in the next coming weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How about the HRH?
Secretary Laura? Asek Laura? Is it Asek Laura? No. You're on one. You're nakamute ka.
Mr. Chairman, it is Director Pratchel Tolentino who will answer that specific question. Pratchel Tolentino, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good.
And the duties and taxes for our routine vaccines.
Good afternoon po, Mr. Chair. Regarding po the HRH deployment funds, these are all regular funds and not from the Bayanihan funds. Yes, we have unutilized funds, but these are from CONA from 2019 to 2020. And last Tuesday po, we already submitted all our unutilized funds to AFMP so that they can utilize this po to pay for the remaining benefits of our health workers po.
Okay, can I just ask for the 2021 utilization of HRH, Mr. Chair, so we don't delay the hearing?
Somebody's got your phone, your machine on, and you're disturbing the proceedings. Go ahead, Senator Angara.
Hingin ko na lang yung datos for the 2021 programs of DOH, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Do you have the answer?
We'll just provide it as soon as we get it today, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Okay. Then the chairman would like to call on Senator Senator Lacson. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before Senator Angara leaves, because there is yet an unresolved issue that he raised earlier, and this is regarding the 5 billion unutilized or unobligated budget under Bayanihan 2.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's referring to the 5.58 billion ayuda to the jeepney or the public utility.
I think this is the DOH. I was told it was under the DOH budget, Your Honor.
I know.
Ay, kung ayuda yun, baka under DSWD. I'm not 100% sure, but...
yeah, probably under DD. So that's another 5 billion.
Baka hong iba pa yun.
Anyway, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to address my questions to Attorney Lau, if I may.
Yes, please. Yusek Lau, are you there? Attorney Lau?
Present, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Good.
The procurement of items that the PSDBM and DOH classified as common use supplies, which we do not agree, of course, based on the March 2020 GPPB resolution list, that doesn't include face shields and other already procured items in the list of items described as CSEs. While Senator Drilon already addressed some of my questions in his earlier manifestation regarding the highly questionable procurements, not to mention the qualifications and wherewithal of at least 2 contractors that supplied those items, meaning face masks and face shields. I would like to hear, for record purposes, the explanation of former PSDB MOIC Lau, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During that time when we procured it initially, we conducted an initial request for quotation and initial bidding.
Before you answer, I'm sorry, before you answer, do you confirm the figures presented by Senator Drilon, particularly on Palmare and Philippine Blue Cross Biotech?
I cannot.
Those are mind-boggling figures.
I cannot confirm that total, Mr. Chairman, but I think that is if it is based on record. I don't have records with me, Mr. Chairman.
I would welcome any intervention from Senator Drilon, Mr. Chairman, just to validate the answers of Attorney Lau, because as it appears, Attorney Lau does not know the figures or does not agree with the figures presented by Senator Drilon.
That's what I was asking him. Malinaw yun. Say, go ahead, Senator Drilon, please.
Yes, these are based, we did not invent these figures. These are based from COA reports and from DBM reports itself. So we are certain that there was an enumeration of the suppliers, and in fact, Senator Hontiveros has this list, which she also brought up, and there we can see the contracts that and supplies that were purchased from specific suppliers, and we note the biggest supplier was
Palmare.
Yes.
And and Blue Cross.
And we stand by those figures that came from government reports.
I said mind-boggling, Mr. Chairman, Senator Drilon, and I'd like to convey this to Attorney Lau. Kasi kung 500 plus million lang yung capitalization, and then naka-enter ng contract na ang
500,000, Senator Ping, 500,000 at 500 million.
Yeah, 500,000, and yet naka-enter ng contract na 1 plus billion. So Attorney Lau, can you confirm that?
I confirm that if it is based on record, then I will confirm that that is the amount that it was awarded, Mr. Chair, or the contracts that they were able to garner.
Yeah, my question is, what kind of due diligence did you undertake on Palmare and Philippine Blue Cross Biotech?
During that time, Mr. Chair, we have a list of the requirements. I think there's a list in our website, and I think the employees from PSDBM can actually answer that, because...
No, but you should know that because you were the OIC. Ang tinatanong ko, anong klaseng due diligence ang ginawa nyo? Kasi kung ina-admit mo na tama yung figures na pinresent ni Senator Drilon, medyo nakakapagtaka yung 500,000 pesos yung capitalization. Makakakuha ng kontrata way beyond yung kanilang wherewithal or capacity to procure or to buy those items para i-supply sa PSDBM.
One with the Blue Cross, Mr. Chair, this is a local company. So I believe it is based on their field jobs registration, mayor's permit. I think if they have also FDA, DTI, I think those are the standard requirements.
Let's answer the question. The question is, who can, with their limited capital, handle a $1 billion peso contract? Basically, those observation.
Mr. Chair, initially they were not awarded. I think gradual kasi yung award. So if they finish the first contract, meron na po silang track record, and that's the basis for their continuing contracts that they can get. That's
so yung 500,000 corporation, marami ng kontrata.
Hindi po. Initially, medyo magkano ba yung award nila?
Yes, Senator Drilon.
Yes. With the permission of Senator Ping, I would like to record some findings that we have on Pharmally. We requested the chairman to issue a subpoena to 3 officers of Pharmally. The Chief Executive Officer, Huang Chu Yin, who is alleged to be the CEO, with address at Unit 14A, 1 McKinley Place. The next one is a certain Mohit Bargani, who is said to be the Treasurer and Corporate Secretary, again with address at 14A, Unit 14A, 1 McKinley Place. And a certain Twinkle Dargani, who is the President with address at Gold Hill Tower Unit 903, Unit 903, 5 Annapolis Street, Green Hills in San Juan. We got these addresses, Mr. Chairman and Senator Ping, from the GIS, the General Information Sheet, filed with the SEC, filed on June 29, 2020. The subpoenas on these three officers, Mr. Lau, was not served for the following reasons. The addresses of Huang Chi Yen, who is the CEO, and Mohit Dargani stated in the 2020 General Information Sheet are the same, 14A, 1 McKinley. Upon our attempt to serve the subpoena, the guard in the condominium said, we quote, the addresses Huang Chi Yen and Mohit Dargami, are non-existent. In other words, their GIS, in their GIS, they stated fake addresses, and the addresses of Wang Chiyu and Mohit Dargani, they are no longer there. And hold on. And in other words, they even stated fake addresses in their GIS. A simple diligence would have shown that these are fake addresses. And then in the other one, the address was 3 years ago, was no longer valid. In other words, the tenant left. So what kind of diligence did you exercise with this, with an award of $8.6 billion? The addresses are fake, and the president's address at Twinkle Dargani, according to the receptionist of Gold Hill Tower, Miss Gargani, left the unit 3 months ago. So mukhang nawala na ito after getting 8.6 billion. This corporation disappeared.
Thank you, Senator Dillon. That's exactly my point why I asked what kind of due diligence. Kasi it's either walang due diligence for reason of collusion or tinamad sila mag-due diligence or they're sloppy, which I don't want to believe because being the PSDBM, a trained and experienced procuring entity of the government. In fact, ang PSDBM, ang daming procurement na ginagawa sila sa common use supplies. And yet, kung walang ganyan due diligence kasi fake yung mga address, I wonder how they were able to award the procurement of billions of pesos of equipment or items. How about the Philippine Blue Cross Biotech? Do you have the list of incorporators, Attorney Lau? Or Senator Dillon, if Attorney Lau cannot answer?
Mr. Chair, I think it is correct, Mr. Chair. We, based on the documents we have, I think the only documents are the general information sheet is not part of the requirements, Mr. Chair. I apologize, but that is how it was.
It's amazing.
So there was insufficient due diligence, and yet you awarded to those two firms billions of pesos worth of supplies.
Yes, Mr. Chair, because during that time, they were the ones who gave it the cheapest and the ones who had available.
No, that's not my question. Hindi lang yung cheapest. Ang tanong ko, dapat may due diligence, di ba?
Yes, I concur with that, Mr. Chair. I apologize.
And besides, yung face shields, hindi nga kasama doon sa list, doon sa GPPB resolution, as we pointed out during the last hearing.
I think it's covered in the PPE, Mr. Chair, under the Mr. Chairman, under the footnotes. There's the one that listed PPE shall include, and one of those is the face shield, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, pero bakit napakamahal? You know, in your earlier media interviews, I read that the reasons that you gave, bakit mataas yung presyo? Kasi issue ng supply and demand, di ba? Low supply, high demand. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair. When we conducted our procurement during that time, that was actually the cheapest because the first procurement session that we made.
No. Answer my question.
50 pesos.
Ang issue, inattribute mo yung high prices ng face shields saka face masks dahil mataas ang demand and mababa ang supply. Correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Yung face shields, for example.
With the indulgence of Senping.
Teka muna, sandali, Senator Risa.
Sige po.
I would like to pursue this muna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yung usaping face shields, how could you justify high demand when the Philippines is the only country in the world that mandates the use of face shields among its citizens? Paano tataas ang demand? And we're talking of international market, hindi ba?
Yes,
Kasi imported yung mga face shields eh.
Yes, Mr.
So how could you attribute to high demand yung face shields? Never mind the face masks.
Yes. During that time,
practically, when we see on CNN, when we watch CNN, nakita naman talaga natin all countries practically use their citizens use face masks, but not face shields because tataka nga kami bakit yung Pilipino lang ang gumagamit ng face shields eh. Never mind as part of the PPE kasi medical frontliners yon. But ordinary citizens, tayo lang ang gumagamit ng face shields. Paano mo masasabi na mataas yung demand?
Yes, Mr. Chair. During that time, when we bidded it out, there were no producers of face shields in the Philippines. In fact, during that time...
No, that's not my question.
That's not the question.
Ang tanong ko, yung supply and demand.
There was no manufacturer in the Philippines and there was actually no history that face shields are being sold in the Philippines except the ones that were being procured by DOH, I think 2019 and backwards until 2015. I think they have history of buying.
Okay. How many pieces of face shields did you procure? Total?
Sure. I think almost 1 million pieces, Mr. Chairman. 1 million pieces, Mr. Chairman.
1 million pieces?
Yes.
Ilan yung medical frontliners na gumagamit ng face shields?
I have no data on that, Mr. Chairman.
Anyway, I'll go back to my previous question. There's no such thing as high demand because sabi ko nga tayo lang ang gumagamit ng face shields. Anyway, Mr. Chairman, yes, Senator Risa, I yield to you. I yield the floor to you.
Thank you, Senping. Mr. Chairman, just a corroborating fact about 2 points that Sen Frank and Senping just brought up. That name that, that Sen Frank mentioned who submitted a fake address here in the Philippines, just confirmed that Su Yen Huang is a board member of Pharmally International Holding Company Limited, the Taiwanese company that I asked earlier, Mr. Lau, if they are affiliated. So it appears they are affiliated because that same Su Yen Huang who gave a fake address here in the Philippines is a board member of that Taiwan-based Pharmally International Holding Company Limited. Just for the record, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senping.
Let me interject on the matter of the subpoena that was requested by Senator Dudong. We issued subpoenas to all of them. And let me just say that in the case of Pharmally Pharmaceutical, Wang Su Yan, wala si Su Yan pero may Wang 2-3. Wala doon sa bakante yan. Nakabakante na. Nakabakante na. Yung vacant yung address niya. And you're right, she's affiliated with a Taiwan-based company. And Mohit Dargani refused to accept. Di ba, Rudy? They refused to accept. I think the wife received the subpoena and they refused to accept the
Your Honor.
Go ahead, Rudy. Go ahead, Dr. Gerald Kimbo.
Your the returns of the office of the Sergeant at Arms of about 10 or 11 subpoena that were issued. They were duly served today at the following: Ms. Christine Marie Suntay, received by Marlon de Guzman, Department of Budget and Management Staff. Attorney Samuel Dagpin, received by Cristina Salve, an employee. Mr. Girish Siltaldas received by the driver, Mr. Maynard Ngu received by a caretaker, and Mr. Michael Yang received by Joyce Trujillo, office receptionist. The subpoena to Mr. Hernan Biron was not served because according to the security guard on duty, there is nobody in the unit to accept because Mr. Biron only goes there once a month. Nonetheless, our server left a copy of the subpoena with Mr. Partasan, just in case he sees Mr. Biron today. The one issued against Mr. Roberto Nazal was not served. Mr. Nazal was not home and the kasambahay refused to receive the subpoena. Nonetheless, our server also left a copy of the subpoena. The one addressed to Miss Twinkle Dargani was also not served because according to the receptionist of Gold Hill Tower, Miss Pontaliza, the addressee, Miss Dargani, is no longer staying in the condominium since 3 months ago. The subpoena addressed to Mr. Ferdinand Ferrer of EMS Components was not served because Mr. Ferrer's wife, Maria Elena Ferrer, refused to receive the subpoena. Nonetheless, our server left a copy of the subpoena with Mrs. Ferrer. And the one addressed to Mohit Dargani and Huang Tzu Yen, both were not served because according to the security guard on duty, said addresses are unknown to him, and he has also informed our server that Unit 14A in 1 McKinley Place has been vacant for more than 3 years. That is the complete report of the Office of Sergeant at Arms, Your Honor.
Well, that seems like there are badges of evasion, or they're just fronts giving fake addresses and perhaps even fake names. So let's ipsa loquitur. Did you do your due diligence, Attorney Lau? Is that the way you do your due diligence? Hindi mo kilala kung sino yung bumibili sa'yo? Kilala ko yung iba dyan eh. Nakikita ko sa mga litrato. Tingnan mo sa Google, makikita mo. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Senator Lacson, if you will allow.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
It's Mr. Chair.
I just want to get an answer from
sorry.
Your Honor, if I may, sorry, my mistake. Mr. Ferrer has just made a statement on chat. He said, I am present, Ferdinand Ferrer. My apologies to Mr. Ferrer and my apologies to the committee.
Mr. Ferrer is present in the chat page? In the WebEx?
It means he's on WebEx, Your Honor.
Yeah, I think their family has been in the telecommunications field for a long time. Yes, the question has not been answered by Christopher Lau, and after him, I'll call on you with the permission of Senator Lacson. I'll call on Senator Marcos. Go ahead, please answer.
Mr. Chair, honestly, the only process that we conducted during the bidding is based on the.
I know you're trying to be humble.
Mr. Chair, I'm just trying to recall, Mr. Chair. We only use, Mr. Chair, we don't include the general information sheet, Mr. Chair. So we do not have the data on that, Mr. Chair.
If I look at the requirements of your bidding documents, it's required there that the corporation must submit certain documents, and I'm trying to pull it out right now, if I may. It is required.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Chair, you agree with us it is required, but you did not look at it.
I apologize, Mr. Chair. I was, I cannot recall, but I asked some of the staff in PSDBM. The answer is the general information sheet is not part of the bidding documents submitted, Mr. Chairman. That is the only answer I can give, Mr. Chair.
Ay, nako, Mr. Chairman. Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, before we recognize Senator Amy, just to establish the track record, have they joined other government biddings before? Kasi kailangan meron silang track record before you even accept them as prospective bidders, di ba?
I am not aware, Mr. Chairman.
You're not even aware.
When we initially
That's a
started,
requirement in the bidding.
during emergency procurement, Mr. Chairman, when we initially procured these items.
Just for the sake of informing you, you're the head of that department at that time, and here are the legal documents required. DTI business name registration in the case of single proprietorships, or SEC registration certificate in the case of partnerships or corporations, or CDA registration in the case of cooperatives. Did you check that out?
It's the registration, they have the SECs, they have the business permits, Mr. Chair.
Oh, then they should have given you the GIS.
They did not submit it, Mr. Chair. I think it's not one of those.
Because they did not submit, and because you're giving them large amounts of money, you did not bother to check.
Mr. Chair, we do not pay them in advance. They have to deliver first.
I know, I didn't ask you that. I just said you're negotiating, and some of these are negotiated contracts, right?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Negotiated. That means it wasn't even done for bidding. Now,
Yes, Mr. Chair.
kung negotiated yan, di ba dapat makita mo na kagad na kailangan mag-due diligence ka, tignan mo, tama sila. Sila Senator Lacson. You have to really look at that. Okay, I don't want to go to the recital because obviously sa first base pa lang, out ka na eh. Let me call Senator Marcos. Go ahead, Senator Amy.
Mr. Chair, you're absolutely right po. It's very clear in the document submitted to Phil Jeps and the rest, because after all, it is incumbent upon the bidders to comply with certain documents, even if it's a negotiated contract. On record, there is no license to operate, there is no registration, there was no permit, there's no SLCC or single largest completed contract, neither was there an FDA permit. So it's very, very curious. Ngunit sa kabila nang hindi makita ang mga taong to at hindi existing yung address, nananalo pa rin ang kontrata na tuloy-tuloy. Their last contract was 1.01 billion, June 29, for real-time fluorescent RT-PCR. That's just for the information of the body. Paano nakakabid at nananalo yan kung non-existent yung mga tao at lahat ng kumpanya?
That's wonderful.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Dillon, I'm also
Yes.
jumping on my bit. I want to ask a question, but go ahead, Senator Dillon.
Yes. Attorney Lau, you were saying that we do not look at the general information sheet, but because that was not required. But the articles of incorporation, is it not a fact that it would show that Farmally was incorporated in September of 2019, just about 6 months before they got supply contracts amounting to billions of pesos? Did you look at how much the paid up capital of Farmally had to be authorized to enter into such a huge supply contract? The authorized capital stock and the paid up capital is less than 600,000 pesos. But the total award to Farmally, barely a 6-month-old corporation, amounted to 8.6 billion. Did you exercise diligence in doing this?
We failed to check on the articles of incorporation, Mr. Chair. Only the
such a simple thing. Articles of incorporation. It is supposed to be a corporation. You are a lawyer. A simple thing for you to do is to look at the articles. And if you look at the articles, you would notice that it was only incorporated in September of 2019 with a paid-up capital of less than 600,000, and it ended up with contracts worth 8.6 billion. Are you telling us that, given these figures, you exercised due diligence and protected public money?
During that time, Mr. Chairman, we did our best to exercise due diligence. Given
Senator Drilon,
Yes.
your best is not enough, Attorney Lau.
Mr. Chair.
This is an interesting question. Did you do it on your own or somebody ordered you to award the contracts to those suppliers? Tell us the truth.
We did not.
Did you do that on your own?
No, Mr. Chair.
Because you did not follow proper procedure. You violated, you throw out of the window lahat ng requirements, lahat ng mga kailangan. So either you did it on your own or somebody ordered you to award those contracts to those suppliers. Because clearly there's a collusion. How can you award billions of pesos worth of contracts to non-existent na addresses?
This is what happened, Mr. Chair. During the time when there was scarcity, we were trying to use our diplomatic access to get these items. So when we were contacting through embassies, through ambassadors, special envoys, these companies were referred to us. And when they were referred to us, they made offers and we just responded to them. In fact, a lot of...
Now, Mr. Attorney Lau, please be very careful. Please be very careful. You're implicating ambassadors here.
Yes, Mr. Chair, nagpadala po kami ng official letter sa kanila. In fact, we conducted meetings. We were trying our best to get suppliers. It's all on record. And when we did it, when several suppliers started coming, when they started making offers, we just entertained them. It's not that we choose them. Kasi pag nagbibid po kami, meron pong RFQ, marami naman po nagre-respond. Yung iba din, mahal.
So how were you able to deal with these people when they submitted fictitious addresses or fake addresses? How were you able to contact them?
They go to our office, Mr. Chair.
You did not even bother saan sila nakatira?
We had no time during that. We had no time during
You're dealing with billions of pesos worth of public funds.
Yes, the only
I'm sorry, but your explanation will fail even an ordinary layman. Pag ganyan ang explanation mo, we cannot accept that. Yes, Senator Drilon.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, I'd like to know from Mr. Lau, did you know the officials of Farmally, or did somebody introduce you to the officials of Farmally?
I don't know the officials of Farmally, Mr. Chairman.
You do not know the officials of Farmally. But would the ordinary prudence tell you that if you awarded 9 and 9.8 billion pesos, malaman mo ba na kung sino mga tao ito na binibigyan nyo ng lalaking kontrata whose addresses, it turns out, are even non-existent and fraudulent?
Mr. Chairman, when that bidding was conducted, kasi dadaan siya ng yung committee. Then they make a market study, they make request for quotations. After they get RFQ, who's the lowest, siya ang i-negotiate. After they negotiate it, isubmit ang mga documents nila, then submit it to my office for signature and assessment. I cannot go down to the function of the group that makes assessment kasi bawal po. So, hindi po ako pwede makisali sa ganun.
You know, Mr. You are a lawyer. You know that the evidence must not only be credible but also consistent with human behavior and human nature. Dito po talagang mahirap paniwalaan na ang isang korporasyon walang experience in bidding in supplies, 6 months old, binigyan mo ng kontrata na mahigit sa 8 bilyong piso at sinasabi mo, hindi mo kilala. Diyos ko po naman. Ikaw naman, sino ang nagpakilala sa iyo?
Mr. Chair,
who formally to supply?
I think on the records, Mr. Chair, they have on the records who endorsed them to our office. I think PSDBM can answer that, Mr. Chair. Basta pagkaalam ko, there are multiple Chinese companies that went to our office and responded, and we reacted to them. And
you mean to say they just walk into your office? Huh? They are companies that you do not know. They are just 6 months old with no prior awards or dealings. Binigyan nyo ng kontratang 8 bilyong piso, and it turns out that the addresses are even non-existent. They committed forgeries and perjuries in the general information sheet. What kind of...
Senator Drilon,
Yes, sir.
Point of information. Sinabi nyo kanina, 6 months old yung korporasyon, September 2019, nung nag-incorporate. Eh sabi ng guard sa building, 2018, wala na raw nakatira doon sa address na yun eh.
Yes.
2018, wala na nakatira, eh yet nag-incorporate ng 2019. How can you beat that?
8 months ago nga, nananalo pa ng kontratang 1 billion.
Anong 1 billion? 8 billion, I mean.
No, yung latest po, yung latest June 2021.
Yung RT-PCR.
They keep alluding to the 2020 shortage of all these PPEs, but they're still winning with or without incorporators with real or fake addresses. I'd like to ask sana, nasa GIS that the beneficial owner of both Pharmaly as well as Bowman, parehong walang FDA, parehong walang license to operate, parehong walang SLCC, belong to a certain Lincoln Ong. Kilala daw po ninyo ito at matalik na kaibigan, Yusek.
No, Mr. Chair. I think I met him in PSDBM when they were conducting meetings, Mr. Chair. Other than that, there is no personal relations, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Attorney Lau, you
Yes,
know, we're almost tempted to cite you in contempt of this committee. So you better be forthright. You better be honest in your answers. You're trying to be evasive.
Mr. Chair, may be allowed to explain.
You've been explaining and your explanation has not been satisfactory. Anyway, go ahead.
Ganito kasi, Mr. Chair. We contacted during that time, initially, mahirap talaga yung supply. We were, I think, negotiating with China.
That is not the issue eh.
That's
mahirap talaga ang supply, pero ba't ka nag-a-award doon sa mga fictitious?
How we met them, how these companies were able to go to our office. Kasi even during that time, even I have no access with anybody. Those who are present suppliers of DOH are not willing to supply. So what we did was we worked together with the embassies, the FA.
Yusek, aabot na ng 16 billion ang pinapanalo na nilang kontrata, di mo pakilala.
Yun nga, may I be allowed to explain this, Mr. Chair? Just for a while. After kasi doon, nung nag-negotiate kami with the foreign countries, Ambassador Wang, we requested that they give us list of the suppliers or in their country. So they sent us list. We tried to contact them. We asked the special envoys. One of the special envoys were Ambassador Lima, William Lima, and there was, I think, one of the Chinese representatives who contacted us is Xing Yang, and they were the ones who contacted us and referred these companies. However, most of the companies who proposed to sell to us wanted full payment outright. Ang naka-negotiate lang namin na mura, na pumayag, is yung ni-refer sa amin ni Ambassador William Lima, which wherein we were using the Philippine Air Force na C-130 and the Philippine Navy that went to China to pick those up. After that, continue sila ng deliver. Nag-open na ang merchant vessels and airplanes. We continued trying to procure. Meron ng mga ilang Chinese companies na referred ng some of the special envoys that made an offer to us that these are their terms, but we want them to go to the Philippines to submit this document. So some of them sent representatives. That is only based on the fact that there were endorsements of these ambassadors. In fact, we wouldn't know whether or not these were fraudulent because we had meetings with them nung kay Farmally, we had meetings with them sa BGI together with the Chinese Embassy. Tapos yung sa A-Star Fortitude, kasi sila, we talked with Singapore Ambassador Yap, and we were endorsed to A-Star Fortitude because there was a problem in the importation in the Philippines. A-Star Fortitude offered to us that they have this distributor in Singapore who can directly offer to us the Merces. So pinutol namin yung Farmally and went directly, not directly to A-Star, but only to Merces because they were the one endorsed already to us by A-Star Fortitude. Yung the rest po ng mga PPEs, continuous po yun. When we bid, sino po ang nag-bid? Ganun lang po. But to say na hindi naman po yan awarded one time sila eh. Kasi we started na sila lang ang nag-offer. You can check naman po. It's on the
Well,
report.
Attorney Lau, I cut you
Special envoy.
there, ano. Sabi nga ni Senator Amy, hanggang June 2021, nag-award pa kayo, eh, hindi na nga ma-establish kung saan nakatira. Award pa rin kayo ng award? How can you explain that?
Mr. Chairman, during the time, they were delivering, so there was no red flag to us. Kasi di ba last time when we had a bidding, merong company na nanalo, tapos meron sila sa record namin that meron pala silang blacklisting, na-cancel. Nagkaroon na
Okay, you did not answer my previous question. Ano pa mga government biddings sila nakasali? Para lang ma-establish yung track record nila.
To other offices, Mr. Chair, only within my office.
Wala pa? Diyan lang sa PSDBM.
No information, Mr. Chair. I cannot answer that, Mr. Chair. I'm not in the authority to answer that. Or
Sabi mo, marami na silang sinasalihan at saka requirement yan, di ba? To establish their track record.
It is in my office, Mr. Chair.
In your office.
Company, only in my office.
Mr. Chairman, may I direct my question? Ika-clarify ko lang kay Director General Kimbo. Nabanggit niya kanina, Michael Yang. Ano po ba spelling nung Yang? Kasi there's a certain Michael Yang who used to be Presidential Assistant for Economic Affairs. And I believe he's Chinese. No?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
One moment, sir. I
wonder if it's the same Michael Yang.
Yes, Your Honor.
Who used to be Presidential Assistant on Economic Affairs. But I don't think he's still connected with Malacanang now.
Excuse me, Senator Lacson. We fished out a video. And I just want to see the connectivities here, and you can go to town if you like, trying to fish out the connectivities here. Please show the video. This is our TVN. You see, do you know Mr. Michael Yang? Is that Michael Yang there in the picture? You see, the lady there is the Director Puno of FDA. And I can see Senator Bongo.
Yeah, I believe that's Michael Yang.
That's Michael Yang in the purple shirt or lavender shirt, correct? Di ba?
If it is the same Michael Yang referred to earlier by Director General Kimbo, Mr. Chairman. But I'm sure the one that you were pointing at earlier, Michael Yang din yan.
Yun nga, Michael Yang. So they went to the palace according to this news report from RTVM, the government channel, in Davao City. And Mr. Bongo, Senator Bongo, our own very own, was there. You can see that. And, it's been said that Christopher Lloyd Lau worked with Malacanang, worked with Senator Bongo, and you've been denying that. Is that correct?
I work under the Office of the President, under Office of the Special Assistant to the President, under the umbrella of Office of the Special Assistant.
So you do know Senator Bongo, and I'm not trying to implicate him here. All I'm just saying is, let's be frank and candid here, because what I see here is a meeting which is fair. It's open. It's being televised to the whole country. And now let's connect it now to the bidding. All right? Formerly President Wang is here. Do you know Mr. Wang? You said he just came into your door, right? In your office.
I do not know him personally, Mr. Chair.
Oh, come on. You just said a while ago that he went to see you.
No, Mr. Chair, the one who went to our office, I think, is Mr. Lincoln Ong. I don't know Mr. Wang.
You're under oath, huh? When did you first meet Mr. Wang, if you did meet Mr. Wang? Now you're denying it.
What? I did Ming Yang, I think, Mr. Chair. Ming Yang?
Mr. Wang.
Wang, no, I don't know
formally.
Mr. Chair. I don't know Mr. Wang, Mr. Chair.
You don't know him, but yet you gave him the award. And of course, you don't know him and you conveniently did not check his bona fides in his GIS, in his corporation. You don't even know if they've done this business before.
Mr. Chairman, the only thing that was required during that time when we were bidding is the SEC registration.
Are you a senator now? You can make the laws the way you want it. Those laws were made by the legislature, and I can show you what you have to follow. You have to follow and take a look at the registration of the corporation. Can you show again yung listahan? Yan. I already said business name, the SEC, valid and current mayor's permit. Did you check that? Do you know if they paid taxes?
Yes.
Because you're not going to give it to them if they don't pay taxes, correct?
They submitted all of those documents, Mr. Chair. It's with the office.
But you said you did not see it.
It is with the office of the PSDBM, Mr. Chair.
But you're the one in charge.
Mr. Chair, the procurement process starts.
You need to tell me you are giving out 8 billion pesos worth of money and you're not even gonna bother. Sino kaya ito? Ha? Ang lalaki mag-bid eh. Billion eh. Di ba? Doesn't it even pique your curiosity?
If we do that, Mr. Chairman, then ako, it naman kami later on for association. So what we do is...
What will happen if you do that?
We might be held liable for association. So what we do is, under association, Mr. Chairman, kasi bawal po yan sa...
Association, you have to take a look at who's bidding. That's why you ask for those documents. Anong association?
If it's just pass or fail, Mr. Chair, during the bidding, if they submit these documents, if it is complete, they pass. If it's not...
Part of the documents, isn't it true, is that they have to submit all these requirements of corporation that they have paid, tax clearance certificate from the BRME offices. Their address must be accurate because if you go after them, you know their addresses and that they live there. Isn't that correct?
The SEC registration should be valid and consonant with the SEC records. As to whether or not it is valid, Mr. Chair, hindi na po namin ma-validate yan. Kasi sa SEC, pag nag-register sila, hindi naman kasi kasali si PS.
You're very cavalier with the people's money. Kaya nagagalit ang tao. Wala tayong pambayad doon sa mga tao. Kung di sila mabigyan ng ayuda, kung di sila mabigyan ng mga nurses ng kanilang SRA, it's because of people like you who are so cavalier about holding the people's money.
Mr. Chair, I think it's unfair
Mr. Chairman.
Because we're doing our best. And during that time...
No, your best is not enough, it would appear.
I apologize, Mr.
Now, let me tell you this. When you graduate from law school in Ateneo de Davao, you graduate first AB. You taught at the Ateneo de Davao, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
And then you became a lawyer, right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
And what was your first job?
Legal researcher, Mr. Chairman.
What?
Housing. Legal researcher for...
You're a paralegal, right? And a college teacher. Then you passed the bar exam in 2005. And then you became a 6-month and 6 months you were an arbiter of HLURB, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
And of course, in 2006, 2016, according to you, were in the law firm. And then Mr. Duterte campaigned and you became a manager. You were an election lawyer. And is it not true that you became presidential management staff, office of the special assistant to the president? Nakalagay undersecretary with rank of undersecretary with Andy Lo, another friend of yours, who is now in 2021 still a USEC in PMS. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So you're all associated together, right? And the wife of Andy Lo is the first judge appointed by the president in Davao. Is that correct?
I cannot confirm that, Mr. Chair.
You cannot confirm? Andy Lo is your friend.
Anderson is my
friend. And you were involved with the free gauge deal and you had that brouhaha with Empedrad and Mercado resulting in the cashiering of a respected officer, Mr. Mercado. And then of course, you became officer in charge. Wow! Sabi mo, I'm just lucky. You were put in charge of a company, of an entity of the government that is now conducting all the biddings that are multi-billion. And yet, you don't care whether you're going to check on all the people. You don't even ask your staff, tingnan nyo kung tama yung binasambit na yan. And I'm aware that you're very strict pagka doon sa pass-fail na sinasabi mo, nakapag-bidding na, papalitan pa rin nyo, maglalagay kayo ng bagong requirements, in writing pa, in handwriting, and then you're gonna change the winning bidder to your favorite bidder.
We don't do that, Mr. Chairman.
I can prove that to you.
We don't do that, Mr. Chairman. I apologize, but we don't do that.
What are you apologizing about? I'm just trying to find out what is going on. I don't have anything against you. But it seems, as you say, by association, ayan lahat, Michael Young was not in that meeting. The president of this corporation was in that meeting with the president. Of course, that was 3 years before, May 2017. And now, the pandemic started May 19. And now, all of a sudden, you give big contracts, 8 billion, 18 billion? Well, how do you expect us to look at that? Even if you tell a high school graduate that, di ba magdududa? And once nagduda, once nagkaroon ng perception na may kalokohan, lagot ka na. Sira na ang paniwala ng tao sa iyo. Alright? We're not dummies here, you know. We do our job well. And by the way, did you not apply for the ombudsman? Ang swerte mo. Naging commissioner ka pa ng HLURB. Ang galing mo. Wala kang dating pinagdaanan na hirap. Tapos naging HLURB commissioner ka. Ang swerte mo. Pagkatapos naging ombudsman, naging officer in charge ka ng PSDBM, and now ombudsman. Nag-apply ka. Nung nandun ako, sabi ko, ba't nag-apply ito? Ang lakas sa loob nito. Sabi ko gano'n. Mabuti nag-withdraw ka. Because when we would have interviewed you. What makes you think there was another applicant the other day? And because she had no credentials as a practicing judge? We said no. Ikaw mag-a-apply ka sa ombudsman. Bakit? Are you preparing for an escape plan na pag pumutok ito, pag wala na ang presidente, wala ka ng kapit, lalabas na yung kalokohan mo? Is that the truth?
No, Mr. Chair.
That is my conclusion. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, when I was at OIC sa PSDBM, it happened because natanggal po yung existing PSDBM because kulang siya ng master's degree. That's why I was OIC. In fact,
you just happened to be there, right?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Your associations just happened to be very convenient, right? You're associated with Senator Go. You were the campaign lawyer for the president. Your friends are there. In fact, the guy who replaced you there is still there. And then you lie to me, you don't know Mrs. Lo? Kaya ako nagalit sa iyo eh. Galit na ako talaga because you're lying.
I did not know Mrs. Lo. I do not know if she was the first judge appointed.
So you know Mrs. Go? So Mrs. Lo. So in other words, you're splitting hairs.
She is a lawyer. She is a
Actually, you must be an expert because you have no more hair, I suppose.
No, Mr. Chair. Judge Lo has been a MTC judge before. So when I was practicing.
Ay, nako. Kasi nahihirapan kami sa gobyerno. Go ahead, Senator Ping.
Earlier, he averred that he did not know
of this pestilence
was appointed judge. Now he's saying that he knows the background of Mrs. Lo.
Yes. She just said that.
Used to be MTC judge, so he's been very evasive from the start.
Chair, I'll answer it. This Judge
Lo
is an lucky judge when I was practicing here.
Excuse me, Attorney Lau.
Yes,
we're so lucky that you were able to barge into the laging handa briefing all of a sudden.
What laging handa?
Just to explain your side. Bigla ka nando sa laging handa briefing and you were not anymore connected with Malacanang or with any government agency, and yet you were accommodated by laging handa briefing. How lucky could you get?
Mr. Chairman, I was contacted by PSDBM simultaneously when all these things happened. Even private news televisions were trying to contact me, and also the government news agency also contacted me, and I answered only to that particular company. In fact, when Senate also contacted me and Congress also contacted me for subpoena, I willingly responded. But it doesn't mean.
And of course, Mr. Lafsar, if I may, you just happen to be in the room with Admiral Empedrad. Using your position, you called him, and it just happened that there was a controversy involving the supply of the combat management systems of the new vessels that were contracted in Korea, costing 15.5 billion pesos, correct? It's just convenient, isn't it? It's very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable, really, when it comes back to you and haunts you. You cannot lie, you know.
That's because that was my job, Mr. Chairman. I have to do my job.
Really? Your job is to check in the Defense Department? You know, Senator Lacson is a Committee on Defense. He did not even bother to call them.
There was a complaint sent to a letter. We just asked them to explain, and they just explained. They even presented. And in fact, we were able to explain that during the last Senate investigation on the frigate. Yun lang ang sinagot namin na they just presented, and that's the only thing we did. Record purposes.
And how did you feel when Admiral Mercado, a career officer, was suddenly cashiered? And it all started by that meeting with you when it was exposed by the newspapers. It became a controversy. How do you feel?
I'm also shocked.
Admiral Mercado lost his job.
I was also shocked, Mr. Chairman, because I also did not know during that time what would be the repercussion. The only concern during that time was there was
your witness. Yes, Senator John.
I don't think we can still get anything from this witness from person because it's been evasive since the time that he started answering questions. Can you expect to get some satisfactory answers from this person, Mr. Chairman? Well, it's in your hands. We'll support whatever action you would take on the matter because being evasive is a ground for citation for contempt. There are rules, Mr. Chairman. It is your call. And if anyone would move to cite him in contempt of this committee, then I will support it. I will second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
We can put this guy in contempt anytime because I was going to ask him again of a note that was given to Mr. Mercado, Admiral Mercado, and can you please put back that note? And it instructed you to Admiral Mercado, Ronald, this was given to me by Bongo. This is coming from Secretary Lorenzana, a man of integrity. Go over it and prepare or report rebuttal to be submitted to the President. So, and this was the offshoot of that meeting between you and Admiral Empedrad, correct?
That note is not coming from me, Mr. Chairman. That's not my handwriting, Mr. Chairman.
No, I didn't say it was yours. You're not even listening. That came from Secretary Lorenzana, excuse me. But the fact is you were part of the salansan there. Biglang nawala yung kontrata at nagkaroon pa ng another problem because when nilagay na yung Korean I remember that in the debates to the Senate. The military should be given the hardware that they desire. It should never be supply driven. And in this particular case, again, you're getting supplies because of your relationship, because of your past. It's supply driven. In fact, I asked you the other day, is it your habit to go to the supplier and ask, sige, mag-supply ka rito? Because of dami-daming pera? Boy, you must be flying high at the time. Well, can you blame us if we think that way? I don't know you. I don't want to put you in a pressure cooker. But right now, when you come here, you better tell us the truth. The truth of the matter is, you knew Mr. Wang. You were associated with Senator Go, and he says you never worked for him. That may be true. You never worked for him, but he knew you. You knew him because you were all part of the campaign committee, and all of a sudden, your friends were also taking over from the department that you left. So how do you expect us to believe you? So, it's so hard to be in this committee because sometimes you have to really be direct because, if we don't look at this, it will go on happening and happening and happening over and over again. At ang talo palagi ang tao. Dapat pumuntang pera sa tamang bagay, napupunta sa mga bulsa ng mga tawag ko kahapon, mga sawang pumasok sa poultry ng bayan. In other words, you are not conducting yourself with due diligence. You did not do due diligence. Siyempre, galing yung mga request na sa Department of Health, correct?
Mr. Chairman.
Correct? Galing lahat yung request sa Department of Health, right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Hindi mo ba sinabi kay Secretary Duque, ikaw na lang yan, Secretary of Health ka, basta alam mo yan eh. Bakit ako?
We sent a letter.
Tapos madudulas ka dito, sasabihin mo, pumapasok sa kwarto mo yung mga yan. You know, that's highly irregular. When you're conducting a bidding, you cannot talk with these people. Go ahead, Senator Dillon. Recognized. Senator Frank, you're recognized.
In the course of our inquiry this afternoon, Mr. Chairman, the witness, Mr. Lau, admitted that he did not exercise due diligence or simple prudence in approving the negotiated contracts to these pharmaceuticals for 8.9 billion. He did not look, the articles of incorporation indicated that it was incorporated only in September of 2019, and it had no prior experience insofar as bidding for government contracts are concerned. 6 months after the corporation was incorporated, the corporation with only a paid-up capital of less than 600,000 was awarded contracts in the billions of pesos. And the good Mr. Lau admitted that he did not exercise diligence in looking at the very simple fact. Articles of incorporation, September 2019. Paid-up capital, 600,000. And yet the awards for these supplies amounted to 8.5 or over 8 billion. Under these circumstances, Mr. President, I think the Attorney Lau should be made liable for anti-graft for entering into a contract with which are grossly prejudicial to the interests of the government and failed by his own admission to exercise the necessary prudence in order to prevent this totally disadvantageous contract from taking place. In view of this, Mr. Chairman, may I move that the matter of this particular transaction entered into by Mr. Lau, where he admitted that he did not exercise diligence, be referred to the Ombudsman for appropriate investigation under the anti-graft law. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, I was called to the phone. Senator Bongo called me and he wants to have his repost.
Before that, Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I have a motion, given the testimony of Mr. Lau, that he did not exercise prudence in checking on the capability of a 6-month-old corporation with a paid-up capital of less than 600,000 to be awarded negotiated contracts of over 8 billion pesos, which turns out to be overpriced. And to me, these are all indications that, or at the very least, a prima facie case for violation of the anti-graft law. Because by the admission of Mr. Lau, just a few hours this afternoon, he did not exercise prudence, the prudence needed to guard public funds. And this should be investigated by the Ombudsman for possible violation of the anti-graft law for awarding contracts patently, disadvantageous to the government, and not exercising the necessary prudence to prevent the losses of government funds for having failed to check on simple things like the date of incorporation of the corporation being awarded the contract. The fact that the GIS indicated an address which is non-existent. So all of this, an ordinary person would exercise diligence, and here he admitted that he did not exercise the diligence needed, and therefore I think this warrants an investigation by the Ombudsman for possible prosecution for anti-graft. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
I agree with you, Mr. Senator Drilon. I agree with Senator Lacson as well, and Senator Amy came up with some compelling facts that there are so many billions of pesos that are not being properly investigated. You know, kahit 100,000 lang, 500,000, dapat investigate mo kung sino yung mga taong pumapasok dyan. At ngayon, nakikita natin, hindi na makita yung mga taong yan, nagtatatago lahat. So talagang dapat talaga investigahin. It really is so difficult to conduct these investigations because if you just base it on the, ang tawag doon, yung lumalabas sa website nila, Phil dyan, ako, wala ka makikita kasalanan dyan. Pero pag sinilip na ni Senator Lacson, sinilip na ni Senator Lacson, ni Senator Marcos, sinilip ni Senator Drilon, sinilip ko, makikita talaga yung glaring irregularities, yung glaring inconsistencies, at pag sumagot, hindi consistent na sagot, very evasive. Tama, sabi nga ni Senator Lacson, we should declare him in contempt. But, all our investigations here, whether it's approved by the Senate or not, I submit it to the Department of Justice and to the Ombudsman so that they could take the necessary action. And most of the time, they do. And I thank this Ombudsman and the Sandigan Bayan. They do because we do a good job here. We try to do a good job here at least. So, Mr. President, I saw the Senate President a while ago. Let me just say that I agree with you very wholeheartedly. And what is the pleasure now of the body? Shall we go to the next, because Senator Lacson is not finished yet.
Wala na akong gana magtanong, Mr. Chairman.
Ako, nakakapagod, ano? Nakakapagod. All right, who's next? Is next, but I'm very transparent. Senator Bongo called up and said that wag naman ako idol dyan, wag naman ako I have no intentions of doing that. I was just trying to test the credibility of the witness, and I don't feel that I have to be defensive. But I will let Senator Go speak for himself. Go ahead, please.
Good day, Mr. Chair, distinguished colleagues, and to our resource persons in this hearing. Mr. Chair, with the permission of my colleagues, may I give my statement since I was already mentioned in the course of the discussions. Since na-mention po ang hearing about the Navy, about the frigate, as far as I can recall, si Senator Honasan po ang mismong chair ng hearing na nag-imbestiga nito, at lumabas na po ang katotohanan at wala po akong kinalaman doon. Naging senador na po ako. Lumabas ang katotohanan sa hearing na ito na pinamumunuan mismo ni Senator Honasan, Senator Lacson, and Senator Soto. Maraming salamat po sa mga colleagues ko ngayon na lumabas na po yung katotohanan. Mr. Chair, first of all, I want to reiterate that I am one with the chairman and my colleagues in ensuring no funds are lost to corruption. As a senator and a member po of the Blue Ribbon Committee, nakikiisa po ako sa inyo rito at kasama niyo po ako dito na gustong malaman ang katotohanan. Tama po si Chairman Gordon, investigasyon sa Bucor, sa GCTA, Pastillas, sa PhilHealth, marami na pong nasuspendido at marami na pong nakasuhan. Pero hindi ko naman po ibig sabihin pinagtatanggol ko ang Pangulo, pero ibig niya pong sabihin ay sa investigasyon natin dito, tuluyan po natin ang dapat tuluyan, panagutin po ang dapat panagutin, kasuhan po ang dapat kasuhan, ikulong po ang dapat ikulong. Seryoso po si Pangulong Duterte sa kampanya laban sa korupsyon. Wala kaming pinapalampas, kahit sino ka man, kahit saan ka man ang galing, basta napatunayang sangkot ka sa korupsyon, dapat kang managot. Kaya nga po, nakikiusap ako sa COA, sa Ombudsman na imbestigahan, panagutin ang may anomalya. Kaya nga po, may COA, Ombudsman at Sandigan Bayan tayo. Imbestigahan, kasuhan at ikulungan dapat managot. Yan naman po ang trabaho nila para matigil na po ang mga haka-haka. Dahil sabi ko nga, unfair naman po ito sa mga nagtatrabaho po ng matino. Labanan po ito ng perception. Kawawa naman po yung napagbibintangang magnanakaw dahil lang sa obserbasyon na hindi pa naman pinal o conclusive. Findings pa lang ay nahusgahan na sila. Kawawa naman yung mga nadadamay na tao. Wala namang kalam-alam, binigyan naman ng DOH ng 60 days para sagutin o rectify ang mga obserbasyon sa kanila. May proseso tayong dapat sundin, bigyan po natin sila ng pagkakataon na sagutin. Kung hindi masagot o hindi ma-account, kasuhan na po kagad natin dahil importante po ang bawat piso na pondo po ng bayan. Marami pong nangangailangan, lalong-lalo na po nasa krisis tayo ngayon, itong kinakaharap nating krisis. Mismo po si Pangulong Duterte ayaw ng katiwalian sa gobyerno. He means business. Kapag may kinalaman, tuluyan na. Iyariin na po natin. Sabi naman ni Pangulong Duterte, pasensyahan tayo. Pag pumasok ka sa korupsyon, iari ka talaga. Yan naman isa sa mga una niyang pinangako sa mga kababayan natin. Campaign against illegal drugs, criminality, and corruption. Mr. Chair, my name continues to be unfairly dragged into issues related to former DBM Undersecretary Lau. Though I'm now a senator, pinagpipilitan pa rin po ng iba na aide ko siya o tao ko siya. Kahit na ipinilawanag ko na po sa nakaraang Blue Ribbon Committee hearing ang katotohanan, sa muli, inuulit ko for the 9th time. Hindi ko aide o hindi ko po tauhan si Attorney Lloyd Lau. Kailanman, hindi po siya directly na nagre-report sa akin na tauhan ko talaga. Iba yung aide na tauhan mo na nagre-report sa'yo. May sarili siyang trabaho, may sarili siyang buhay. Si Lau ay isa sa mga daan-daang empleyado, opisyal po ng Malacanang noon, 2016. Naging bugado siya ni Pangulo nung kampanya. He was appointed to the Presidential Management Staff at the start of the President Duterte's term until early 2017, after which he was appointed nga po to HLURB and later to the DBM in 2019. Before resigning last June of this year. Yusek Lau did not directly report to me, nor did he ever serve as my aide o tauhan ko talaga. Kilala ko po siya. Taga-Davao rin po siya. Pero hindi ko po siya tauhan o aide. Eh kung may kasalanan siya, panagutin natin. Kung kailangan ikulong natin. Kailangan i-contempt natin. I already assumed my post in July 2019 as an elected senator when Lau was designated to head the PSDBM in August 2019. Sa makatuwid, magkaiba po ang naging landas namin ni Attorney Lau. Taong 2019, senador na ako. Taong 2017, wala na po siya sa PMS. Huwag niyo na pong ipilit iugnay sa akin si Lau ngayon at sino mang nakatrabaho ko noon. Noong Special Assistant to the President po ako mula 2016 to 2018, tumakbo na po ako noong Oktubre, mayroon akong oversight functions base po sa Executive Order number 1 sa ilang mga opisina sa Office of the President tulad ng PMS, yung protocol at iba pa ng mga opisina dyan. Pero hindi ibig sabihin dahil nakatrabaho ko sila noon ay naging aide ko na o tauhan ko na kagad sila. As Special Assistant to the President then, I was not involved in the day-to-day operations and management of the Office of the President. As per Section 2 of EO1, as staff, I exercise mere oversight functions of 3 independent and cross-functional offices like the OSAP, Office of the Appointment Secretary, and PMS. Limitado lang po ang administrative and supervisory functions. Sinisigurado na nagagawa nila ang kanilang mga mandates, may patupad ang mga improvements sa mga sistema at proseso para mas maging efficient at effective po ang opisina po ng Office of the President. Kakaupo pa lang ni Pangulong Duterte, halos lahat ng mga opisina na under sa oversight ko ay gustong ma-identify po sa maliit na opisina ng OSAP. Dahil ito ang malapit sa Pangulo nung umpisa pa ng kanyang administrasyon, pero hindi ibig sabihin aide o ka-close ko na kayo. Marami po dyan feeling close lang po. Iba po ang aide, iba po ang nakatrabaho. Pero ako po, yung kampanya namin ni Pangulong Duterte laban sa korupsyon, hindi po kami tumitigil hanggang ngayon. Lalabanan mo namin yan. Kahit sino ka pa, kahit tumulong ka pa nung kampanya, kahit na magkaibigan ka. Wala po kaming pinipili. Lahat na nagre-report sa Malacanang compound noon ay katrabaho ko. Hindi ibig sabihin naging aide ko na po at tauhan ko na po. Hindi naman siya directly nagre-report sa akin. Anyway, Mr. Chair, nandito po, meron lang po ako i-share na slides to be flashed on screen for the nandito ang listahan ng mga empleyado ng OSAP na napakaliit lang po niyan. Isang USEC lang po ang na-under dyan, isang ASEC. Yan lang po ang Office of the Special Assistant to the President. Ito naman po ang kanyang service record na nakalagay Presidential Management Staff ang sweldo po niya. Dahil po oversight function lang po yun. Napakaliit lang po ng opisina. Ito naman po ang sweldo niya. Klaro naman po na sa PMS po siya kumukuha ng sweldo. Napakarami po ng empleyado ng PMS. Pero sa totoo lang, ang mahalaga dito ang pulisiya namin ni Pangulong Duterte na kahit sino ka man, kahit saan ka man ang galing, kahit tumulong ka pa nung eleksyon kay Pangulong Duterte, kapag pumasok ka sa korupsyon, yari ka talaga. Pero kung wala ka namang kinalaman, itigil na lang po ang pag-iintriga sa kapwa, kawawa naman po. Gaya ng sinabi ko, ang pangunahing bilin ni Pangulo sa kanyang mga ina-appoint, di po siya nakikialam paano po magtrabaho yung mga tao niya. Ito na po sinasabi niya, kahit sino, just do what is right and avoid corruption. Kapag ginawa mo ang tama at inuuna mo interest ng mga Pilipino, suportado ka namin. Wala kaming pinipili ni Pangulong Duterte sa laban kontra korupsyon, kriminalidad at illegal na droga. Kung mapatunayang may kasalanan ka talaga, kasuhan na agad para matapos na po ang issue at mas matutukan na po natin ang laban kontra sa pandemya. Ulitin ko, basta pumasok ka sa korupsyon, maaring na-appoint ng mga taga-Davao pero ito ay dahil kilala sila ng Pangulo, may tiwala sa kanila at alam ang kanilang kakayahan. Dahil yun naman po ang kilala ni Pangulong Duterte dahil probinsyano po siya. Doon ang gagaling halos yung mga kilala niya. Pero kahit may utang na loob sa kanya, wala sa usapan ng korupsyon. Pareho kaming galit sa magnanakaw. Masagasaan na po ang dapat masagasaan. Wala kaming pakialam. Kung may reklamo at haka-haka, may intriga, may proseso naman po ang executive branch para maimbestigahan ang sino mang gumawa ng korupsyon. Bukas po ang tanggapan ni Pangulong Duterte. Sinabi niya yan. Binibigyan halaga ni Pangulong Duterte ang bawat reklamo, kahit anumang reklamo, katukin lang daw siya at handa siyang makinig. Kung ano man ang gawin ng proseso ng executive branch po sa mga reklamo ay nasa kanila na po yan. May proseso pong ginagawa ang executive branch. Bilang senador naman, suportado ko po ang mga investigasyon na ito para po lumabas ang katotohanan, para po mapanagot ang dapat mapanagot. At kasuhan po natin ang dapat kasuhan. Anyway, medyo isi-segue ko na lang po konti dahil ito naman po issue. Dahil naawa na po ako dito sa dalawang taong ito. I'm referring to the President and Secretary Duque. To Secretary Duque, tagal ka nang kilala ni Pangulo. Alam naman natin, alam ni Pangulo, isa kang tapat sa iyong tungkulin. Kaya nga po ikaw ang kanyang pinili nung pagkatapos na isang secretary. Alam natin nakapagserbisyo ka na rin sa dati sa ibang administrasyon bilang health secretary at tatay mo rin po naging health secretary. At imbis na mag-retire ka na lang sana, wala masyadong pressure na, inanyayahan ka magsilbi sa bayan muli ni Pangulong Duterte. Nagpapasalamat kami dyan sa iyong dakilang sakripisyo. Make no mistake, sabi nga ni Pangulong Duterte. May tiwala siya sa iyo until the end. Pero mahirap na. You have done so much already for Filipinos. We don't want that because of issues about you. Your output will be compromised, especially now that we both know lives are at stake. My word of advice is make the supreme sacrifice when the right time comes. For now, may hearing naman tayo dito as member po of the Senate Committee, Blue Ribbon Committee. Clear yourself in the DOH, sa lahat po ng empleyado ng DOH, and address COA's findings. Gusto ng tao malaman ang katotohanan. Importante, lumabas po kayo ng malinis, lumabas ka ng malinis, mahal ka ng Pangulo at pinaglalaban ka niya. Alam ko, mahal mo rin ang Pangulo. Desisyon mo na yan pagdating ng panahon. But my advice is make the supreme sacrifice. Alang-alang na lang sa mga kababayan nating Pilipinos. Naawa na rin po ako kay Pangulong Duterte. Pinapasan na po niya ang mundo at lahat ng problema. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Go. As promised, I thought it would only be fair that you would be able to give your say. Just as I did the other day, I allowed your request to be the first to say your piece because on the matter precisely of Lau, because Christopher Lloyd Lau is a very controversial figure right now, as we've seen, and he's associated with people who seem to be accompanying him wherever he goes. For example, I think one of his partners before, Mr. Leong, is now sent when he could not get the ombudsman. Mr. Leong is now his overall deputy ombudsman, and they were both together in previous positions. And now his other friend, Mr. Lo, is now running the. It's so hard to avoid all these facts. In law, you put together, sasama mo lahat sa mga facts na yan, and put it on a tapestry like a whiteboard. Makikita mo yung mga commonalities, makikita mo yung timeline. And that's why I think we've been, at least in this part of this representation, we've been more than fair kay Secretary Duque. And so therefore, we want to make sure that he is not being grilled here, he's not ginigisa siya rito. The people want, as you say, malaman kung anong katotohanan, kung saan napunta ang pera, at kung talagang tama ang paggastos ng pera. Yun lang naman ang cross-examination natin dito sa mga testigo. Ang kulang lang ni Secretary Duque, pagtatanungin siya, pinapasa niya, parang siguro pagod na siya, pinapasa niya sa iba, and wala ng kumpiyansa pag pinapasa mo lahat dahil tumatagal yung investigation, dahil kabisado niya. But I'm not going to tax him on that because I also know Mr. Duque is a hardworking man, and I've not really charged him with anything, but I was really very, very upset with the so much money being put into this PSDBM. It's just like a dark room with dark people inside the room na talagang sila lang ang nagbibigay ng pera ng bayan na dapat mapunta sa ayuda, mapunta sa paglabas natin sa COVID. Pero nakita natin ngayon talagang napaka-liksing magbigay ng kontrata na hindi man lang titignan kung ano nangyayari, kung sino yung mga nagbibid. Senator Lacson, please go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I would just like to be clarified. Did Senator Go just ask Secretary Duque to resign when he told him to make the supreme sacrifice?
You better ask Senator Go that. Senator Go? Because that sounds like it. Because when I heard that, I thought that he was already sending a message that you already done so much and you're making a sacrifice, supreme sacrifice. You must make that, and so that life will go on. But life will not go on unless this is clarified. The message clarified. Yes, go ahead, Senator.
I'm just wondering, Mr. Chairman, can a senator do that to a secretary or department secretary? Ask him to resign?
There have been many surprises in my life, Mr. President. This is one of them again.
Collegial decision, we passed a resolution. But can one single senator ask a department secretary to resign?
Well, that is the prerogative of any senator here as far as I'm concerned. But Senator Go is raising his hand. Senator Go?
Mr. Chair and Senator Ping, advice lang naman po yung akin.
Okay.
Mag-sakripisyo para, alam mo, naawa na rin ako kay Pangulong Duterte. Nabanggit ko na po kanina. Pinapasa na po niya. I'm sure importante po dito ay lumabas sila na clear po yung dahil yung karamihan dito nagtatrabaho lang po para sa ating bayan, nagsasakripisyo. Bigyan po natin sila ng pagkakataon na lumabas po na malinis at meron naman po silang may pagmalaki sa kanilang mga pamilya. Maybe decision na po yun ni Secretary Duque pagdating ng panahon.
Thank you for the clarification. So it was just an advice coming from a senator.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Secretary Duque, did you take this as an advice or as a shot in the bow?
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, I have been attending all these hearings both in the House and here in the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee with one goal in mind, and that is for me and the DOH to clear all of these COA observations and findings of deficiencies and submission eventually of our agency action plan on the recommendations. Yun lang naman po, we want to clear everything. So if the time comes when I need to resign, I will. I mean, there's no problem with me, Mr. Chairman. So what is important is we clear all of these findings of purported deficiencies, and we will address them squarely with all my DOH team. We've worked so hard to lead the fight against this pandemic for 18 months, and we have been relentless. Many of our workers have even died. Some got sick. Some had to be isolated. And so we are confronted with a very unique situation. This is a state of public health emergency. We cannot assume that we are operating under normal circumstances, because definitely we're far from a normal situation. And each one of us in the DOH has been so dedicated and committed, if not passionate about really leading the way, helping the local government unit, explaining to our people, explaining to everyone what the DOH knows about this evolving virus. Our doctors, our scientists, everyone has had a major contribution in our fight against this pandemic. And if it's not enough, the people will be the one to judge me. The people will judge everyone from the Department of Health, and we are undeterred in service. We want to work. We want to get the vaccinations ramped up as much as we can, and I owe it to the Department of Health. All my people in the DOH who have supported me in this fight against the pandemic, and we would like to. If I will need to leave, and I can leave, there's no problem with that. I just want to be cleared all these COA findings. Yun lang naman po. At saka sana yung mabakunahan ang maabot po natin ang herd immunity, Mr. Chairman. Yun lang
Yes, I accept that, and I appreciate that, and I respect that about you and many of the loyal Department of Health people. But as you say, you have been investigated by the lower house and by the upper house, and that is our duty as a separate branch of government, especially after an independent body like COA comes out with a complete committee report that cites many discrepancies. And all of us, including myself, have been part of that, and I never thought of itself as a victim. It's just really to make sure that the transparency aspect is there. And I'm sure you understand that, right? And I think you'll agree with me that the chair has been very, very, open to all your answers. And of course, sometimes I will make a remark, really just to help you to go direct to the point and answer. And I think the senators have given you a lot of leeway as well. And nobody has really insulted you or bashed you. But really, when it came to Christopher Lau, the object of this committee is to raise questions that needed to be answered. So the issue is not personal. The issue here is yung pera ba ng tao, binigay natin, binigay ng Kongreso sa gobyerno, yan ba nagagamit ng maayos, na check ba yung maigi, at para sa ganun, umabot tayo sa panahon na marami na tayong vaccine na mabibili, umabot tayo sa panahon na makakapag-ayuda tayo, umabot tayo sa panahon na makakapag-invest tayo muli sa infrastructure para magkatrabaho ang tao at makalabas tayo dito sa hirap ng pandemic. Ayoko mag-imbestiga in the middle of the pandemic, but that's the way it is. You're dealt the cards and you must make a decision. And that's the way it is. So I just want to assure everybody that I think all the senators can hold their head up high. That's why in the beginning, right away, I was kind of flabbergasted at the statement made by the president. And I don't want to go back there again. The words have been stated. And I'm sure it will be taken properly in its proper context. So I just want to ask any other senators if they want to ask questions pa? Meron questions? Yes, Senator Marcos.
Yes, thank you very much. Just by way of manifestation, sir, if the PhilHealth chairman, Geran, is still around.
Senator Amy, just a moment. I just saw Senator Dillon raising his hand. I'm sure he will not touch any manifestation.
Yes.
Senator Dillon, yes.
Yes, I would like to raise a question to Mr. Lau, still in relation to the face mask purchases. Is Mr. Lau still around?
Mr. Lau?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I am still around, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm referring to a company called Cosmic Technologies Incorporated, who was also a supplier of face masks. Do you know this company, Mr. Lau?
Cosmic.
They're in the list.
No, Mr. Chair, they're just, I think, one of the persons who participated in the process of procurement, Your Honor.
Okay. Did you examine the articles of incorporation of Cosmic Technology when they submitted application?
No, Mr. Chair, we only rely on the submitted SEC registration. That's the only thing we relied into.
Yes. Did you, if you cared, if you exercised ordinary prudence and just a simple examination of the articles of incorporation and the business of this company, you will immediately know that Cosmic Technologies articles of incorporation will show that it is engaged in the business of trading mobile phones, computer, and other IT products. How in heaven's name did they end up supplying face masks at an overprice of 22 pesos and 50 centavos per piece?
I cannot answer that, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I can answer is that during that time, they are one of the companies who participated and who had sufficient stock to deliver at the price lowest compared to others who offered during the time. So they were awarded, and since they had GIS, not just the SEC registration, the DTI, the mayor's permit, we relied on those. So based on our reliance, we made an award. That's the only answer I can give, Mr. Chair, because that's the only thing we did. I cannot make any answer because I really cannot source any answer other than that, Mr. Chairman.
So you didn't even care to look at the articles and examine and investigate whether they are competent and qualified to supply face masks, which is not their business, and considering the fact that they submitted quotations which are grossly overpriced if you look at the suggested retail price of the DBM itself?
During that time, Mr. Chair, when we bidded it out, they were one of the lowest. Every time we bid, yung na-awardan namin, sila ang pinakamababa dun sa mga nag-participate. As to that they are still overpriced, I cannot answer that kasi it will be based on documents. As to yung question that I did not peruse or examine the articles of incorporation and their GIS, that is correct. That was not conducted because during that time, we only relied on the SEC registration. That's the only answer I can give, Mr. Chair, because that's the only thing that we did.
Well, this only indicates the diligence that you exercise in awarding contracts using government funds when in fact it is totally shown in formally in a bigger scale. They're totally unqualified given where they were in terms of their financial standing. But we leave that. That's why I have suggested that the Ombudsman conduct an investigation because you have admitted that you did not exercise prudence nor the diligence necessary to guard public funds. So, Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions on Mr. Lau.
Yes, Mr. Chair. following on the minority leader's manifestation and query, in fact, it is not only Cosmic that deals in cell phones, completely alien to the medical supplies contract that it won, but also Bowman, which has a primary business of hydraulics and landfill equipment. And indeed, SunWest, whom we know to be involved in construction and building, and only acquired its medical certificate to deal in equipment very recently this year. So this seems to be a consistent pattern, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, as Vice Chairman, you recognize Senator Risa.
Thank you, Senator Ping. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 4 last quick questions from me, alternating kay former USEC Lau at kay OIC Sec Kanda. Mr. Lau, pagkatapos ng exchange natin kanina, nagko-communicate ulit yung mga local, mga Filipino PPE manufacturers natin. Sabi po nila, they went through stringent requirements by the DOH in order to be certified. Pero despite nagkameron sila ng mga makina to produce the medical grade PPEs at meron silang FDA approval po walang order ang pinlace sa kanila. So I just want to ask Mr. Lau, Attorney Lau, yung PPE importers ba na inawardan po ng PSDBM during your watch, sila ba nag-secure ng FDA approval? Kasi parang kanina narinig ko si Sen Aimee, sabi niya, at least yung isang kumpanya ni walang FDA approval. Or at least yung mga inawardan ba, na-validate ba yung kanilang international testing certificates, which were required of our Filipino exporters nung hiniling nyo sa kanila na mag-repurpose sila. So yung mga PPE importers ba, lalo na yung mga China-based importers, dumaan din ba sila sa butas ng karayom like our Filipino manufacturers?
Yes, Madam, Mr. Chairman, we use the same law that is applicable to all suppliers. There are sets of documentation requirements when it comes to foreign suppliers and local suppliers, and we implemented that because that is what is provided.
Well, I promised the chairman I would be brief with these questions, but just for the record, mukhang kahit sa mga dokumento, bungi-bungi yung sinubmit ng Pharmally at baka ng iba pa. And ang karanasan po talaga ng mga Filipino manufacturers, pinahirapan talaga sila. Hindi tulad ng mga importers, mga Chinese companies, at sila, mga Pinoy, hindi nakatanggap ng kontrata. And then, Mr. Chairman, to Sec Kanda, please. Ma'am, nandito pa po ba kayo?
Oh, I see.
Mr. Chair, very quickly, on the earlier point, with the permission of Senator Ontiveros.
Yes, Senator. With the permission of Senator Risa. Yes, Senator.
Yes, on the point of the standards, the third-party technical inspection, Mr. Lau, you mentioned this earlier. Nagkaroon ba ng ganong klaseng proseso para mabusisi yung mga quality nung mga face mask na galing dito sa mga construction company?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. When they deliver, we submit it together with DOH to have it for inspection, and they will have to...
Who inspects?
We have an inspection team sa...
What are their names? Who were the ones who inspected? Can we have their names? Because we want to get...
Provided by PSDBM. And we also have a team from DOH. I think they also have a list. And there are also testing facilities that kasi yung minsan na di-deliver nila pero hindi nagagamit ng DOH kasi wala pang result sa testing.
If we can get, Mr. Chair, may we request the DBMPS as well as the DOH to submit all the names of all those involved in the technical inspection of the items that were purchased without by these companies that obviously did not have any background in medical facilities or equipment or PPEs. For the record, Mr. President. And thank you to Senator Ontiveros for...
Yes, so ordered. The Director General has taken notice. Have you taken notice, Director General Kimbo? of the request of Senator Pangilinan?
Yes, Your Honor. We list
Thank
down
you.
all the requests, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, a question please to Acting Sec DBM Sec Kanda, if she is here.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes po. Ayaw po kasing sagutin specifically ni former Yusek Lau kanina. Pero a quick question, just for the record po, para lang malaman ng aming komite, sino po ba nag-endorse ng Pharmally?
I have no idea, ma'am, who endorsed it. I really was not involved in any of the transactions of procurement service. I was in another branch of DBM.
Kung gayon, ma'am, dahil tayo na rin nag-uusap at para mabilis ako, bago ko itanong yung isang huling tanong kay former Yusek Lau. Moving forward, ma'am, paano ba natin ma-improve yung bakit parang ang hirap gawin na due diligence na yan sa procurement? It's an essential requirement. So, may balak ba ang DBM? Paano talaga tuparin at gawin ng mahusay ang due diligence sa procurement, lalo na sa PSDBM?
Meron naman ho, malinaw naman ho yung rules. I think ang problema dyan is if you don't follow the rules.
Of course.
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Risa, may I just
yes, Mr. Chairman.
Very quickly?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
We know that PSDBM is an attached agency ng DBM. So ano yung working relationship ba between DBM proper and the PSDBM? How much control do you exercise over that entity?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Senator, the Procurement Service Executive Director has a rank of Undersecretary and they attend our EXECO meetings. In fact, they report. As to the closeness, some of the